evening. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, February 25th, 2020 Town Council Committee of the Whole meeting. All councilors are present with the exception of Councilors Parker and Zeperi, who notified us that they would be absent this evening. Calendar and communications. Councilor Baumgartner.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Franco.
Honestly, I can't think right now of what we did, other than we had a beautification meeting last night. I know I've attended other meetings, and at the moment, I'm drawing a blank.
Okay. Councilor Heed.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Aubry.
I would just like to mention the success of the first-rate fundraiser for the Beautification Committee. Thanks to the kindness of Fairview, we were able to use the restaurant, and it was very successful. Standing room only, and a good return on it. So we're very happy with that.
Very nice. Councilor Bordelon.
Yes, I do not have the exact dates, but I did get information regarding, just a reminder that Westside Middle School has two $300 scholarships up for graduating seniors from Fitch High School who have graduated from Westside in the past, and they just have to apply, and there's a whole bit of stipulations for that, and they just have to contact the PTO at Westside.
Councilor Melendez.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. I would like to ask the manager at this point, as my part of the communications, to give us a brief update on coastal public access. As you may know, there was recently an editorial piece published in the newspaper, and I just want to state before the manager gives us his update that I favor coastal public access. Mr. Byrd.
Let me start by saying I also favor
Thank you.
public access.
Now that we're clear, you can perhaps give us an update on where we are with this.
We've actually brought Eric Callahan, one of our attorneys who's doing the research here, to update us.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And while we're doing that, I just forgot to welcome the Boy Scouts from the Mystic Troop that are here working on a merit badge. So welcome, guys.
The William Sealy presentation.
Councilor Franco wanted to add something that she remembered, if you don't mind, Attorney Callahan.
I'm sorry, we all, there were many of us that attended the William Sealy presentation that described what the developer's vision is for that site. So that can be found on YouTube. It was videotaped, and if anybody's interested in watching, they can tune in.
Very good, thank you. Attorney Callahan.
Good evening. So I've been asked to research two different tidal coastal access issues. One is at the Powerhouse condominium property, which is 15½ Water Street in Mystic, and the other is Fort Rachel Marine, which is 44 Water Street in Mystic. With respect to both properties, I was asked, is there public coastal access at these properties, and does the town have the right to put a sign at these properties to signify to the public that there is such coastal access? And before getting into my analysis, I think it's important to note that when a research assignment is provided to my firm, it's coupled with the understanding and expectation that the town is looking for the correct answer, regardless of what that may be, and that's how we approach these issues as well. With respect to Powerhouse, the short answer to the analysis is no. There is no express coastal access at the Powerhouse property, and because there's no such access, the town does not have the right to put up a sign and signify to the public that there is such access. We analyzed the issue from two different routes, and what I mean by that is there's access trails from on the Mystic Art Association property to the immediate north of Powerhouse, and on the Randall's Wharf property to the immediate south of Powerhouse along the Mystic River. We analyzed whether there's the ability to access those or link those two trails on the river side of the Powerhouse property. We also analyzed the issue from Water Street. Could the public walk from Water Street through the Powerhouse property to access the river? With respect to linking the two trails along the river, we are aware that there was a site plan approval to construct a dock back in 1988. And as a condition to that approval, once the dock was built, there was supposed to be coastal public access on the dock, and it was supposed to be deeded to the town. Well, the dock never got built, and therefore there was no easement recorded, and that site plan has expired. We're aware of no other express right on the land records that would allow the public to walk along the river adjacent to the powerhouse property. And I don't express any opinion about the ability to walk below the high mean watermark. That's something that is really within DEEP's jurisdiction, not the town's. And analyzing the issue from Water Street and the ability to walk across the powerhouse property, I think it's important to understand that the powerhouse doesn't have contiguous property going all the way to Water Street. So when it built the condominium, it also needed an easement to be able to get across another property to its property. And there is such an easement recorded on the land records. That easement allows for the condominium and its residents to go across that property for ingress and egress purposes. It allows for utility access, but there's nothing in that easement that says the public can walk through that property to get to Powerhouse for coastal access purposes. So, without anything expressed on the land records that allows these rights, I'm unaware of anything that would allow me to render an opinion that there are these coastal access rights at the Powerhouse property. To the extent DEEP maintains a map that suggests otherwise, it would be my opinion that that map is not accurate and it doesn't allow for any legal access for coastal access purposes to Powerhouse. And one thing I wanted to note is that in 1990, the Powerhouse condominium sought a variance to build balconies at their property. And there was a concern that those balconies could have an adverse impact from someone standing on Water Street and looking out towards the river. There was a concern there'd be an adverse site impact. And so DEP at the time wrote a letter to the town's zoning board and suggested that you may mitigate this adverse impact on visual qualities by conditioning your approval of the balcony project to include public access from the street to the water's edge. DEP acknowledged in the letter that regardless of the pending permit application for docks and a public access walkway, the site currently does not provide public access or any other water-dependent uses. An approval conditioned for access would render the use of the site water dependent, mitigate potential adverse visual impacts, and ensure access should the docking facilities and associated walkway not be permitted as proposed. So in 1990, DEEP is writing a letter saying, unless you get this dock, currently there are no other rights to coastal access, and they're saying you may mitigate this balcony impact by conditioning your variance approval on there being access deeded from Water Street to the river. The ZBA's minutes confirm that they had this letter in its possession when it decided the variance. It did not condition its approval of the variance on the items that DEEP recommended. So my point with that is that in 1990, DEEP is writing a letter saying, we don't think there's this access. You should condition your variance approval on getting this access, and the ZBA did not require that access at the time. So in my opinion, there's no express right to coastal access at Powerhouse. Fort Rachel Marine is 44 Water Street. There is coastal access at 44 Water Street. In 1992, a special permit was granted to construct a 2-story boat building with office space at Fort Rachel Marine, subject to certain conditions. One of the conditions was that there be coastal public access on the site conveyed by deed along with the associated right to install a sign signifying that access. An easement was recorded in 1992 at volume 548, page 840 in the Groton Land Records. The access is displayed on a map, which is recorded in the town clerk's office. And at least within the last couple of weeks, I drove by the property and there is a sign signifying there's coastal access. The issue is that coastal access does not go all the way to the train tracks on that property. It stops before that. My understanding is that there are certain citizens who maintain that there should be coastal access above and beyond what was deeded back in 1992. There are references within the chain of title to a highway. And my understanding of the argument is that if there is a highway, it must mean that it's a public highway. And if there's a public highway, the public has the right to walk along that highway all the way to the train tracks. And I have seen this language in the chain of title. The specific language is that, bear with me one second. The specific language is that the property is subject to the rights of others to use Water Street, so-called, a highway crossing the premises in a northerly and southerly direction. It does not say rights of the public, it says rights of others. And the reference to the so-called highway leads me to believe there's some concern of whether it's actually a highway or not. But this issue is quite complex, and it's something I'm still in the process of investigating. Part of the complexity of it is that it's not necessarily all confined to the chain of title. We also have to look at, were roads laid out, were they discontinued? You have to look at selectmen's meetings when they went back to the selectmen times, or potentially council meetings. So there's more involved than just looking at the chain of title. Also, these properties weren't all configured as they are today. Boundaries have changed, references have changed, so it's quite an involved process. There's a couple observations I do have without reaching any sort of formal opinion yet. The highway references, like I mentioned, don't actually say public highway or that they're in favor of the public. In my discussions with town staff, they have no recollection of this highway being used or maintained as a town road. There is a house at the rear of the property, which is known as 64 Water Street. In 1970, there was an affidavit signed by the then owner of the property, which appears to be trying to preserve a driveway right. It also suggests that as far back as her late husband could recall, back to the 20s, people had used this access point, including train workers. Well, there's an express easement recorded that give the workers of the train company the right to access those train tracks. So I don't deem the fact that the train workers access the tracks through this so-called highway as dispositive. The town receives some state aid to maintain town roads. The town does not apply for state aid to maintain this so-called highway, nor does the town provide any aid to the town to maintain it. There are some plans that were prepared many years ago. I'm talking 1915 and in the 1860 to 1870 range, which does show an extension of Water Street to the train tracks. I'm not sure why, and I'm trying to get to the root of where that's coming from. It seems like it could be just a paper road or a somewhat of a driveway, right? And in 1989, the town, through its RTM, commissioned a task force to analyze unapproved roads within the town. One of the tasks of this task force was to develop a complete and concise listing of all unapproved roads in the town. And a report was prepared by that task force. It noted that the issue of unapproved roads has been complex and a long-standing matter in Groton. And there's a notation where they found that this Water Street was an unaccepted road. So I'm still in the process of analyzing it, but I just wanted to highlight some of the complexities with analyzing what this highway is. Again, there is deeded coastal access there. It's just the question is there something above and beyond where the public has the right to use this so-called highway?
Thank you very much. Counselor Aubry?
Have there been any conversations with the owners of the powerhouse?
Mr. Burke?
John, have there been any?
Yeah, John Reiner and Deb Jones and I met with their property manager and chair of their, I can't remember if it was a chair or as another board member, but we met with, I think, 2 board members and the property manager. They're supportive of something like water access, some sort of boardwalk, but not so keen on going through the property proper. But we're looking at ballparking, estimating costs for doing a walkway, and we're supposed to, once that's done, we're supposed to go back with them and go before the full powerhouse board to talk. So.
Thank you.
Counselor Franco?
So I stopped down there tonight, and I had noticed on Fort Rachel, from the gazebo area to the train tracks, they have all the boats out of the water, so the whole area is full of boats right now. So if there was supposed to be access there, would this not impede the access? And is it also dangerous for people to be going back there with them all up on stilts? And whose liability would that be if there was a coastal access through there?
Well, I think that I observed the same thing. It seems to be a pretty active property in terms of their, the boats being all over the place. And I was surprised to see the length from that gazebo to the train tracks isn't as long as I expected when I saw it on paper. So, right now, I think it would be ill-advised to inform the public they have any right other than what's been deeded. Because I think, it could create a myriad of legal issues.
So let's just say you found there's access.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be liable if something did happen on that property?
Well, I think if we found the access, then
Or any access, who's liable is basically what I'm asking.
right, it's their real property, so I haven't really analyzed that issue, but the people would be walking across their property, so I would place the liability on them, but I would want the ability to analyze that further.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Baumgartner?
So first, I'd like to thank Attorney Callahan for coming out. I think the original intent of this discussion was to happen behind closed doors and in an executive session meeting. And so I think, given
That's
that...
not correct.
I think if you actually review previous meeting...
I don't think he's talking about tonight. Early on, when it would be assumed that when you would get legal opinions, once you'd have them, it would likely be in an executive session. So
Tonight was not intended
no,
to be
tonight was not
executive
intended to be an
session.
executive session.
No, and that's
what
not
he-
what I said, Mayor. And I prefer not to be interrupted when I'm speaking. So again, I think it's important that, the public has the right to hear the status of coastal public access, given, again, as the mayor stated, that it's become more of a public issue. And there are many concerned citizens who have submitted information on the record. And so I'd just like to leave it at that with no disrespect. Did you have any discussion whatsoever with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, with their legal department regarding coastal public access in the last few weeks?
No, I haven't.
And so the documents you reviewed, where did you find the documentation? You referred to the letter from Deep to the ZBA?
That letter that was, I believe, in one of the planning files in the town. Other information was from the land records in the town clerk's office.
And to move to Fort Rachel Marina, you had mentioned who the liability would be on in the case anything were to happen. Is it also a fact that folks who utilize the marina, people who have their boats there, you know, if they were on the property and they were to be hurt, you know, obviously, you know, who would the liability be on in that situation? My only point is there's people already walking within that property all the time. So whether or not they, you know, use that property to, and, you know, have a, you know, to maintain their you know, store their boats there or winterize their boats there. You know, there's folks always walking around downtown Mystic. So the real question is, how do we have true public access going from Fort Rachel Marina all the way down to Gravel Street if there are now clear impediments to that public access? And, you know, it goes without saying that, you know, had Powerhouse Condos built those docks, we would have had an even clearer, more unfettered access. But in the interim, that hasn't happened. And the question also becomes, before they were approved to build those docks, what kind of existing public access was there? And to me, and if you can clarify this just from your research, but what were you able to have any kind of understanding as to what existed prior to what was approved by the Planning Commission?
So we went back to the time before that property became a condominium. Because when there's a condominium, you have to declare what's on the land records, and there, in our opinion, there was no public access on the Powerhouse property before that dock site plan. So because the dock was not built, there is no coastal access.
So you can definitively state that there was no public access whatsoever prior to Powerhouse Condos being built?
From the time period that condos were built forward up until when we last looked at the land records on that issue, there was no express right to coastal access on the property. That's our opinion.
Mr. Burt, you want to?
I was just going to point out express, no formalized. You know,
Right.
there's anecdotal evidence or anecdotal, at least, comments that there was access, but unless it exists legally, it doesn't exist.
Thank you.
Is that all?
Yes.
Counselor Bordelon?
Thanks for the update. Looking at the powerhouse, the way that it's written, is it possible that this dock could still be built and it would fall under that public access?
They would have to reapply to install the dock because their site plan has expired. So I think it's possible if they wanted to build a dock and they filed a site plan to do so and went through all the normal process,
Right.
then,
And submitted the documentation stating that they already had this and it never got done. and
well,
they
I think they'd
wanted-
have to start the process over again because their
Right.
site plan is expired. And I think depending on where that dock goes, if it's close to the channel, the Army Corps would get involved. So they'd have to go through that whole process over again. And in
Has there
my
been any
opinion,
express interest in wanting to do that, have we heard?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't think they have any plans right now to build anything.
And then moving on to the Fort Rachel site, you said there's a sign already there, and you said the access doesn't extend the whole length, that there's a gray area as to where it ends. Is that the way I'm understanding it?
Well, there is no gray area where the deeded access ends.
Okay.
There's a map in the town clerk's office that was filed in 1992. That's very clear
Okay.
what the boundaries are.
So the sign that's currently at this site, where is that located in reference to the deeded area?
It's in proximity to the deeded area. So
At the
if-
beginning part of it, the front part?
Yeah. So my recollection is Water Street, when you head south,
Yeah.
wraps around and goes back up Fort Rachel
Yeah.
Place, and when you go through that kind of curve there, you
Yeah.
can see a sign there.
So it would make sense to me that, or possibly in where this would go, is, you know, we definitely need to have the state sites updated. We can't have stuff up there and have people thinking there's access that doesn't exist. So as a town, I feel like it's our responsibility to be, once this is all finalized, and if there is that finalized for the powerhouse, we should be contacting the state immediately and making sure that that easement or agreement is taken off the site so that tourist and community at large, it's no longer up there. That should be like one of our urgent items to do. Also with that, with the Fort Rachel, because there's a bit of a gray area, not on the deeded part, but on the other part that they're still working on, it would seem to me that we need another sign at Fort Rachel, one at the very beginning part of that access, and one stating how far that access goes as of today. That way, we at least have that kind of clear cut, I think, and making sure that the state sites reflect that. Then once, if there is more easement there, we could always move the sign, so to speak. But I think having a clear beginning and an end to that, since it's kind of a controversial thing and something that people are unsure about, and the state sites say different things, I think we should clean it up and clarify it as best we can as a town. And I'm not sure how that would look or how we would do that, but that would be my thoughts that we should do. And how do we get that off that state site then? If it's not for one, and clear markings to clarify to people who may think that the easement goes further. So, thank you.
And Councilor Franco wanted back in?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I'm in favor of coastal access, don't get me wrong. I was just curious as to what the liabilities are, because I don't know. And I mean, it would be anywhere, even on the dock, like if somebody got hurt on the dock, or who would be liable for these things, as there is a coastal access easement. So I wasn't sure where the liability laid on that. And my curiosity was, because if you go down to the property where Fort Rachel is, and if there's supposed to be, if there is an access, the access would be impeded because there are boats everywhere, even all the way to the back of the property there where the train tracks are. It's not very conducive to people walking back there to be able to see much of anything. I'm just simply stating that from what I've seen tonight. I'm not trying to say there shouldn't be. I'm just trying to tell you what my what I saw there tonight, and make it quite clear. I am in favor of coastal access. Thank you.
Councilor Baumgartner.
And again, I think this council should support any and all effort to expand public access, even if, you know, we've exhausted all legal avenues, you know, doing our due diligence to ensure that the public has as much unfettered public access to the water as possible. You know, Mystic obviously is a place that is heavily trafficked by visitors and folks who live within the town, and there are very few places in the entire, you know, really truly the eastern coastline that can offer, you know, the level of, you know, of closeness that we can offer. And so, you know, I do think it's very much important that, you know, DEED, for example, does perhaps can provide a presentation as to how Groton was, I'm sorry, Mystic was given that designation.
That's Groton.
Which is part of Groton, you know, you know, west of the river, because it's not a designation that most other communities have as well. And we should really be proud of that. But, you know, I do think we should keep on digging as much as we can, because they're, you know, the information we have on this goes back quite a ways. And, you know, I just truly hope we have not exhausted all kind of avenues of research. So, and I say that with the utmost respect, but I think given, I think the importance of having a true, you know, offering true public access to the public, you know, we owe it to our residents. So leave it at that.
Mr. Burke.
Sorry. I just want to make it clear that there would be nothing more that the staff would want than to have found easy, full access. That the staff all wants that, obviously. Yeah.
And I don't, just for clarity purposes, I will speak for myself. I will not speak for the rest of the council, but I think you have not heard any opposition to coastal public access expressed by any member of this council. And there certainly is no conspiracy going to prevent access from happening. What you trust us to do is to do what is legal and proper for the townspeople. and that's what we're trying to do. Counselor Bordelon.
I just wanted to ask a question to the town manager. Putting an extra sign if needed, if it made sense on that property, would that be something we could do?
Easily.
And,
I'd want to, if possible, I'd like to wait to
right.
see what this
And then
turns out.
updating the state website and all that could be done.
Sure.
There must be some
Well,
way.
you certainly send something to them.
Okay, and then if there are boats on that part where, I guess legally, I mean, should the boats be in the coastal access spot? Should it be pushed forward? Is that a whole nother thing that we'd have to look at down the road?
I'm not sure.
Well, if the conclusion is there's coastal access there and there's a defined path, then
Right.
the boats shouldn't be in that path.
All right, so, and then we would have to move at a different angle on that at some point then?
We would have to work that out.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right, I think, and I think it's great, I know it's a controversial issue in a lot of areas, and it's important to, a lot of people weren't given the right to go down to the water for many years, and it's an important part to have access, and I think it's great that we're doing the research, and hopefully the records that we keep today will only be even better down the road. I think it's important that we act on the signs, and any of the information that we've dug out now that has already been re-signed, really kind of coming up with a database or a spreadsheet or software to take some of the archived information and make it a little bit more, you don't have to go digging as much, kind of a little bit clearer, so that in the future, as people have to research, just as signs may fall or be taken down, that we have a nice distinctive map, which I think it seems like that's happening, so, thank you.
Counselor Aubry.
I was just going to say, you know, we have a walkway on the Quantic River. You might want to look at that, isn't that Quantic River? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You might want to look at that as to where liability falls, you know, since we have one existing. And the other thing that we might do is certainly talk to Niantic. They have a very long walkway over there. So there may be some things that we could be learning that they've already studied that would make it a whole lot easier.
When Parks gives an update, Mark might even know something offhand. I don't know, we'll have to ask when it comes up tonight.
Yeah, I know in many cases, now it's with houses, not with something like this, but if there's a right-of-way, there's usually provisions in there that you use it at your own risk. And it simplifies things when you have something like that. So that could be part of the signage in the future.
I believe there is a statute that when a property owner allows use of their property for a recreational purpose, there is some sort of exclusion from liability. I would just want to look at that before I really formally responded to your questions about it.
Yeah.
Counselor Heath.
For the town manager, is there something that you could direct the staff to be aware of if there are developments along the coastline to keep in mind that coastal access should be part of it?
That's part of the requirements. If you do something that's water dependent, you have to give access. I believe I believe it's state statute, but it's at least, otherwise a town one, I think it's state statute. Yeah, their staff is well aware of that. That's how we got all those weird different jogs from that plan you see. They're all from different times people built things.
And then just the other concern was the length of time this is taking. I think from Mr. Attorney Callahan's brief presentation here tonight, you get a sense of why it's taking so long, because there is so much research that is being done, and they are trying to be very thorough.
Just to mention too, we've also authorized, we're going to have a surveyor who's done extensive work in that area, pull on a few more threads to follow some more leads.
So thank you. I think that was helpful, and it clarifies things for the public who have lots of questions about this, and know that we are working in good faith to resolve this issue. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, we are on to approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. Do we want to take them all as one?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep,
okay.
simple.
Counselor Baumgartner, would you move approval of minutes for A, B, and C, please?
So we're approving them separately?
I believe that I just heard consensus to move them as one.
Right.
Yes.
Is there a consensus or?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there consensus
it's my
to
assumption
move
per the
them as
rules,
one?
Per the
Yes?
rules, we would approve them on a consent calendar. But
Would you
when-
like to move them individually, sir? You're
I-
welcome to if you'd like. If you prefer, that's fine.
So per the council's consensus, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 28th, 2020 minutes, the February 4th, 2020 special meeting minutes, and the February 11th, 2020 minutes. So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved by Baumgartner and seconded by Heed. Is there discussion on any of the minutes? And this runs from page 2 through page 62, I believe. So there's quite a bit of minutes here. Counselor Bordelon?
I just, once again, I know it's not a dictation or a full, what was the word used?
Transcription?
Transcript. But it is public record, and I know that it's important, and do you want to talk before I finish?
On the third one, the newest one, if you notice, a lot more detail was added, including citing who said things
Right.
for questions.
I
That's
just-
about as much as we could do.
I just want to state on the record that it is important to have this, because there are people that are hearing impaired, and I know of some people who actually read minutes with disabilities. They're not able to watch the meeting. They can watch the meeting, but they cannot hear the meeting. There are elderly people that can't sometimes pick up tone. And so as much as we thought we want to get away from it, and some people criticize it, I feel, my opinion, I think it is important that these minutes are public record. As we heard today, as the lawyer was researching things in public records, these minutes are very vital to talk about the key components of that could be missed if it was just summarized. So I just want to think of not only the disability, the hearing impaired, and looking at all styles of how people learn and having the ability to, not everybody talks clearly up here, and having the chance to read it in a text format. So that's, to me, it's very important. And with that, looking at this, when we talked about Northeast Academy,
Could you give us a page number, please?
I was,
She needs it for the records.
I understand that, but I wasn't done with what I was saying.
We still
What-
need a page number.
Okay? Duly noted, with respect. Looking at this, and I'm looking and finding the page number, so bear with me. Looking at where Dr. Grenier starts to speak on page 5, there's a bunch of things. It talks about the assistant superintendent speaker, superintendent, and then it goes Dr. Grenier, it goes mayor, it goes Dr. Grenier. As you continue on, it goes Dr. Grenier, Rick Norris, Northeast Academy, Mayor Granatowski, Mr. Norris, Mayor Granatowski, Assistant Superintendent, discussion. And then it continues, and then it moves on to the next thing. Under there in particular, I watch all my minutes, I watch all the meetings over that I attend and a part of and don't attend. And I know for a fact that I had stated several items under that are not even on these minutes that are right here. For example, one of the things I had stated was the concern, and I questioned, how often are the children able to get on the playground at Northeast Academy? Constituents had reached out to me with concern because of the flooding and the moisture issues at that school, that he was stating that they had changed some of the humidifiers in the building and they're working on the issue. And he had proposed that the CIP that proposed had nothing to do with the playground issue. None of that's even captured here. I'm not even captured here even ever speaking. People know that I speak up on the school issues all the time, especially one with Northeast Academy. I even stated the health concerns. None of that's captured. Only a few select people are captured. And so I feel it's not fully transparent and accurate collection of what happened. Does it have to be fully? It could be just noted, Council Borderline states, but it's not on here. So I have some concerns about the minutes once again for this week. Also, there's a section here, it doesn't say who amended. We amended on page 9, it talks about the solar panels, discussion. It talks about, it's on 6 as well. It was written as that we as the council could take action, or we could not take action and continue to research other methods for the other sections of town that are not able to have solar panels, like in the city, due to the way that the power companies are set up. But it got amended, but it doesn't say who brought that to amendment. It says that it was amended, but I think some of that is important to capture when people are looking back at how we came to this thought. And for some of us up here as we age, or even my own self, from my own medical history, sometimes I need to be refreshed in my memory. Having it here as a quick reference is important. So those are the things that I can see. I believe Councilor Baumgartner brought up, like, can we amend it to this? Mayor Granatowski was helping, kind of coming up with the wording. I don't know, I just think we could do a little bit better, is all, with no respect.
So if you look on page 9, the motion to amend is listed there, moved by Baumgartner and seconded by Granatowski. So noted as far as the other recommendation for the prior pages. Are there any other discussion points on the minutes? Mr. Burton.
I just want to point out again, on the third set of minutes, she has started putting a lot more detail in. So it's more like what you're saying. If we wanted to be on that, we would look at a transcription service.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councilor Heed.
I would respectfully disagree. I don't believe the minutes should be a transcript. It should be a recording of general discussion points and votes. We have the television for the purpose of full transparency. And that's all. Thanks.
So we are discussing the accuracy of the current minutes. We are not discussing rules in the future for the way we will handle minutes in the new council. So if there's any other corrections to the minutes that are on the floor, anyone else who would like to speak? Councilor Bordelon wants to speak again. Councilor Bordelon.
Once again, I just want to state for the record, in reference to the minutes, I understand that it's not a transcript, but if you're, who decides then, I'd like to know what should be put in here then. Why is it that someone can state this, but there's no mention of the quality of the playground once or ever on here? There's nothing mentioned at all. There's not even a mention that I even spoke to the issue. It doesn't have to be a transcript, but if you look at this, it looks like no councilors responded except for the mayor. That's not true. I understand with your respect, you're saying no, not to have a transcript, but it's important to make sure facts are put in here. Important things about the children's playground being flooded and not being able to use it is an important fact that should be in there. And also noting that Dr. Grenier stated he'd be looking into it. So once again, I disagree with the way that they're written. I could then look at this and say, some of this other stuff could have been omitted then, and some of that other factual information. So when writing the minutes, it depends on who's writing them, I guess, right? They can be one-sided, and that's why it's important to capture as much important information as possible.
And that's what is attempted in this newest minutes.
Mm-hmm. So on this one, can this be amended to put in more information regarding Northeast Academy?
We're right in the middle of all this. Lisa's helping extensively with the budget items. I prefer not. I could send it out for a transcript otherwise, but as we've talked about, we're a little short-staffed in that office.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it was, whenever this comes up and there's a question with the minutes, we always ask for the page number and the paragraph. That way, the person who handles the minutes, and it depends if it's a council meeting or a COW meeting, there are different people that handle the minutes. That way they can go back in, they can listen to the audio or watch the video, and then they can make the appropriate corrections. But they need page numbers to know where things go. You've provided page numbers for our different concerns that we have, and I won't say names, I'm trying not to say names, staff can look into these items and can adjust the minutes as needed. So if there's no further discussion on the accuracy of the minutes, we will vote. All those in favor of approval of the minutes of the 28th of January, the 2nd or the 4th of February, and the 11th of February, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We are 7 counselors. We have 6 in favor, 1 opposed, Bordelon, and 0 abstention. The minutes passed. Thank you. We are on to new business. This is item 5A on page 63. And we are at Councilor Franco.
Make a motion to recommend a resolution appointing Eileen Dugan of the firm of Sussman, Shapiro & Wool, Brennan, Gray, and Greenberg, P.C. as town attorney. I so move.
Second.
Moved by Franco and seconded by Bordelon. Is there discussion on the appointment of the town attorney? Councilor Bordelon.
As I'm new to the process, so how many years have we been using this law firm? And
It's
my
been a
other
long time,
question,
and we did go through a full RFP process 2 years ago,
Okay.
looking at other, and we are butting against the timeline for appointing a town attorney.
If you
Okay.
would just introduce yourself for the public, please. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, my name is Eileen Duggan. I'm an attorney at Sussman Shapiro in New London. Our office has served as a town attorney since the mid-'80s for the town of Groton. As Town Manager Burt mentioned 2 years ago, and has happened on many occasions, frankly, since our original appointment, we've gone through a full RFP process with the council.
Thank you.
thank you. And you said we're at a time restraint, you said, Dr.?
Yeah, the charter has a timeline for when you have to appoint someone by.
Right. So then maybe we should make sure we start to look at it earlier. I think I would prefer, with no disrespect to the attorney, I think they've done a great job. I just feel for full transparency purposes, there should have been some discussion prior to talk. This has only been just sent to me in a packet to kind of motion to vote on it, but it didn't really state, have we looked at other prices and what's in the best interest of the town? It's not that I don't believe that this attorney's office is in the best interest of the town, but it just seems that it should at least come before discussion, not a motion just to vote on it or not. Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
And just to remind the council, that is why I send emails out. I've been mentioning it for a couple of months now in emails.
I know, but it's hard in an email. Once again, we're volunteers, and so we check them only in the evenings and around our schedule. It's what other attorney, there was no other option. This was only the one presented. I mean, as not being the town manager myself or an elected position, there was no other thing presented. So it's hard to have a full discussion with the proper council members in regards to attorneys through an email without everyone being involved. Thank you.
Councilor Aubrey.
I think we have a motion on the floor. When we have a motion on the floor, you can ask any damn question you want to ask. So if you want to ask questions, ask the questions. Most of us have gotten to know Ellen and the firm, and I think we've been quite satisfied. But since you're new, you want to have more information, go for it.
Are there any-
With all respect, it has nothing.
So I'm
once
sorry.
again-
Councilor Aubrey, Councilor Heed, and then we can come back to you. You'll
With
yield?
all respect, Councilor Aubrey, my statement has nothing to do, I think they've done a wonderful job from what I've seen. I'm just saying it should be open and transparent for discussion. That's all.
That's
Okay.
what I'm telling you, you can
We're
have right now.
gonna take a quick recess.
Wasn't brought up.
Thank you. We are back from recess at 7:45, and we are working on item 2020-109, Town Attorney Appointment. Were there any further questions on this item? Seeing none, we will vote on 2020-109, Town Attorney Appointment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 6 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Bordelon. Thank you.
Opportunity to work with the town. It has been obviously quite a long time, but it's been a very good relationship, I believe, and we look forward to continuing it. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. All right, we are on to 5B, 2020-71, Contract Extension for Professional Auditing Services, 2020-2021, page 64. I believe we are on Councilor Heed, please.
I'll make a motion to recommend a resolution authorizing a contract extension for professional auditing services. I so move.
Second.
Moved by Heed and seconded by Franco. And we have Finance Director Landry, if you just introduce yourself and then fill us in with the background, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Cindy Landry, I'm the Finance Director. As you know, Blum Shapiro of West Hartford is the town's auditor, and they have been the auditor since 2005. And recently, they came and presented the fiscal year 2019 CAFR to the council last month for acceptance. And upon completion of that audit, it was our contract with them, the 3 years expired. But when the council in December 2016 appointed them for the 3-year term, we had a 2-year extension that was also approved at that time. So I'm here tonight to ask that the 2-year extension be approved so that the auditors code, that Blum Shapiro, will continue for the next 2 audit years.
Very good. Do councilors have questions regarding this appointment? Councilor Aubrey?
I'm assuming by what you say that you're very satisfied with their services.
We are very satisfied. They have about 50 clients in the state, and they've always been very proactive, and they're always available to us. They understand the town of Groton's processes and procedures. We have had the same partner since 2005, but they, like we, have staff changes, so we've had staff that's on site that is actually doing the audit. We've had those changed over the years, so it is fresh eyes always looking at it, but we have that continuity with the partner for when the work that's done here on site that goes back for review.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, all those in favor of 2020-71 contract extension for professional auditing services 2020-21, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are on to item 5C, and this is 2020-108 Shellfish Management Plan on page 65, and we are on Councilor Aubrey, please.
Motion to recommend a resolution approving the Shellfish Management Plan dated January 21st, 2020. I so move.
Second.
Moved by Aubrey and seconded by Bordelon. And I believe we have members of the Shellfish Commission here this evening. And I believe we also all received a packet. Did the members of the commission wish to speak to us this evening, Mr. Bird?
Yes. Give a presentation.
Thank you. If you'd like to come up, please, gentlemen, ladies. I'm not sure who all we have. And I just ask that if you would please introduce yourself. And when you are speaking, if you could make sure you use the microphone, that way it's picked up for the people watching at home. You'll have to just pass the mics back and forth, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Mr. Burke, first of all, for arranging this, and thank the mayor and the town council for putting us on the agenda here. My name is Dick Conant. I am the deputy warden with the Groton Shellfish Commission. Puts me at the very bottom of the pecking order. And I'll let some of the commission members introduce themselves here. We have a short presentation to bring you up to speed on what we've done as far as updating the management plan, and then we can hopefully act on the resolution.
Very good.
I'm Ed Martin, chairman of the Groton Shellfish Commission. I'm Neil Brown. I'm the secretary for the commission.
And I'm Roger Sherman. I'm a commissioner.
Thank you.
Great. We'll try to keep this brief, but if there are any questions, we'll certainly entertain those. Give you some history here. The Shellfish Commission goes back in some format back into the 60s. As the regulations or regulatory climate became more rigorous, we put probably was state-of-the-art management plan in place back in 2001. We have not adjusted that. That was approved by the town council back then and implemented by Groton Shellfish Commission. We have not changed that for 20 years. It has, I think, served us very well, served the town very well. Essentially, we are regulated by the State Bureau of Agriculture, Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Aquaculture. We call them DABA or DABA. It's a lot easier. I always am halting when I have to try to get that mouthful out. Essentially, they are regulated on the federal level by FDA. So essentially, we are dealing with foodstuffs here, hence the requirements, strict requirements for water quality testing, and a lot of oversight, regulatory oversight on this. When I came on the commission a couple of years ago, it was evident that we needed to probably update our management plan. The state statute essentially says keep it up to date. It doesn't really speak on any type of terms or periodicity. What you see in the new management plan, if you were to look at the one from 20 years ago and the one that we have over the last year updated, you'd recognize the document. We haven't changed it that much. The changes that we have made primarily are in graphics. Computer science has moved along extensively in the last 20 years. So the primitive graphics and maps that we had 20 years ago, we've been able to update extensively and worked quite a bit with GIS in the town. Let's see, how do I advance? There we go. Let's just say, the original plan, April 1st, 2001. The plan, and I attached to your PowerPoint the index for the new plan at the back there. So you kind of take a look at, and if you have any questions about exactly how the plan is put together and why we touch on certain things, certainly please bring them up. We established the governance of the commission. We establish essentially what we regulate: 4 species of clams, blue mussels, oysters, and the very elusive scallops that we don't see too many of. We determine permit fees, different type of take, recreational program versus commercial leasing. We spell out aquaculture, transplanting, relaying of clams, stocking of clams, and then, of course, the enforcement. That's what the wardens get into as far as going out and ensuring that people are complying with the regulations. Management plan updates. Essentially what we've changed here is the new plan, the updated plan, better defines the regulated species, the 6 I just mentioned, and the harvest limits. Just clarifies what can be taken, what the sizes are, how you size a certain clam, especially in the recreational program. We have increased fees, or we are proposing to increase fees about 25 to 50%. That sounds extreme, but we have not raised fees in the last 20 to 30 years. This increase brings us in line with the other town, and essentially the state parcels out shellfish programs to the various towns. Stonington has an independent commission, Groton, Niantic, right down the shoreline. DABA sits on top of us and regulates us, but local management is on a town basis. The price increase, I kind of joke sometimes with some of my clammers when they say, oh geez, you're going to raise your daily permit from $5 to $8. I say, you can go out there, take a peck of clams, a couple hours of work, that's probably 20 pounds of shellfish. Go down to Big Y and price out what shellfish are. You'll be lucky to find it for $5 a pound. A couple hours of work, you've got 80 to 100 bucks of fresh seafood. I think it's one of the great deals in Connecticut right now, the recreational fees, even with them going up a little bit. And it certainly provides, it's a wonderful location, provides some exercise. We cut a break for town residents as far as fee structure for people over 65, but certainly people from outside Groton can come in for a slightly higher fee, and shellfish down here gives them essentially coastal access if you're up in Colchester or someplace like that. We updated and standardized the recreational and commercial maps, essentially defining, well, we don't define what town waters are, but essentially clarifying where town waters are, where the recreational beds are, where the commercial lease beds are in the town. This is, I think, the big improvement that we're seeing in the new plan is the mapping. And we certainly have been very dependent on the state, and they've been great partners as far as putting together a more cohesive and comprehensive and understandable management plan. We have incorporated all the state of Connecticut water sampling requirements into the plan directly. That essentially are, the water sampling requirements are our marching orders. If you think about this, this is a foodstuff. And this is a foodstuff that someone takes right out of the water, and some people, I have some of my clammers out there that are eating oysters and clams raw. So as far as keeping on top of sampling and the requirements to prove that our waters are clean and protective of this foodstuff is something that I think all of us have put a lot of importance to, and we work very closely with the state as far as the sampling program, trying to stay up to date with the monthly sampling and other issues that come up, such as red tide, that has become a bit of an issue in the region in the last few years. And then finally, we provide a comprehensive commercial regulatory requirement and permitting guidance. This was something that actually Stonington, and you've probably seen some of the controversy in the local paper over in Stonington and Waterford. Thank God lightning has not struck us yet in Groton, but controversy does come up, especially with the commercial program. Stonington partnered with Sea Grant and the state and put together a wonderful flow diagram and a comprehensive step-by-step procedure for someone who wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going into commercial shellfishing, I'm going to make the big bucks. It's advisable that, and we hand this out to them, that they take a look at the regulatory requirements. It is Byzantine to get from where you think you want to go into commercial shellfishing to the point where you have all your permits and you've complied with various core federal concerns, state concerns. So that was an important component. Management plan probably expanded from about 40 pages to 80 pages. Probably most of that 40 pages is indeed this commercial regulatory guidance and the various diagrams and maps we put in. Then finally, some future initiatives to kind of let you know where we're going. I'm kind of the newbie here on the Groton Shellfish Commission. Some of the commissioners have been doing this for 20, 25 years. This is a very, very dedicated group. I think the program works very well, has worked very well, has been a real asset to the town of Groton. And we look forward to kind of moving ahead. New management plan is one step. We certainly want to, we just got Mumford Cove, Area C, reopened again for shellfishing. We shut down because of public access issues about 5 years ago. I think we're beyond that. It took forever to get, when you shut an area down, the regulatory requirements to get an area open again are onerous. It took us 1.5 years of water quality sampling and working with the state to get that open on a seasonal basis from November through April. We're open, we're doing great business out there, and I haven't heard of any conflicts between the Mumford Cove Association and the recreational clammers yet. Cross my fingers. We are going to be surveying, as the water gets warmer, the Paquonic River for a potential reemergent scallop population. We have not had a scallop season in the history of our program. Stonington was open for scallops short term this year. Niantic Bay, they open and close. Anecdotal evidence suggests that we may have a good scallop population of the Paquonic River. We're fortunate to have a new commissioner just come on, Dr. Craig Tobias from UConn, who's going to help us out a little bit with some of his students, do a survey for scallops and see exactly what we have out there, and then we'll make some management decisions on whether or not we could potentially have some type of scallop season, you know, on a recreational basis. Certainly we continue to promote the recreational clam and oyster program and shellfish stocking. Part of our recommendation to increase fees is I've seen the finances. The commission has done, I think, a wonderful job, in my personal opinion, of managing the finances of the commission, paying for the wardens. We have boats that we need to use for patrolling and for water sampling that must be kept up, maintained. And also, we stock extensively. Our commercial leases essentially pay us in oysters every year that we stock. We have had fits trying to find clam stock at a reasonable price or even availability on the open market, but I think we are on a couple sources right now that hopefully will come to fruition this spring. I've seen the commission, they are willing to jump in $5,000, $10,000, whatever. As we get money in from permits, we are putting that money back into the program as far as education, stocking, enforcement, all the things, water sampling, all the things we have to do to comply and improve the program. And then finally, once I get done with all of this, well, I should mention we've had, before my time, I think I heard we had a fairly, maybe a rocky relationship with the state regulators, and I think all the towns did. I've had nothing but a favorable relationship in my years, and I think the commissioners would echo that. The communication is much better than it used to be, and I did pass around it for anyone that didn't see in the New London Day. I thought that was a very fair and reasonable and comprehensive article on recreational and commercial shellfishing. I think it's an up-and-coming area all through the Connecticut shoreline, especially out here in southeastern Connecticut, and I think Groton is very well positioned to be part of all that. And then finally, I'd like to, because I'm envious of what Stonington has put together as far as a website, and once we get past the management plan, I'm going to try to convince the commission that we do something a little bit. We post the management plan on the town website, but I think we can do much better than that as far as putting together a website of our own that's tied into the town website. And I'll need to work with IT and Jenna a little bit on that. But I think that's the next thing that is on my list. And this not only will contain our regulations, where to get a permit, who to contact if there's an issue, but just educational material on shellfishing. And with that, that's basically what I think I have to say. If there are questions, concerns for the commission here, fire away.
Did any of the other commissioners wish to speak before we start? Sir, did you have something you wanted to say? No?
I have to apologize. I ended up and left my hearing aids at home, so.
Oh.
No problem.
That's okay. All right, so I think Councilor Baumgartner.
First and foremost, would just like to thank the commission for the work you do. It truly is yeoman's work. In many respects, as council, we spend a lot of time in meetings, and I know, you do the same. But also the direct involvement you have with the kind of the regulations and enforcement. You're a bit more different than the other commissions in town, and so just want to thank you for that. And had the privilege to working with many of your members when I served in the State House, in dealing with the Bureau of Aquaculture, so they could better understand the needs of the shellfishing community down here in southeastern Connecticut, specifically here in Groton, and so glad that the state has been listening and is a more willing partner, and hopefully down the road the water testing can take place at UConn, and that's been a battle in itself, because I know your commission has a member of the commission has to in many cases drive the water samples down to the water testing site in Milford. So could you describe kind of what that process is like for the public, so the public can have a better understanding of what you have to do?
Certainly. We have explored the Yukon angle. The problem is that DABA is regulated by FDA, and they need to run an FDA-approved lab down in Milford. There are 2 FDA-approved labs in the state, Milford and up in Rocky Hill. So if we were interested in doing more water sampling just to try to get a handle on, because we were seeing elevated fecal coliforms in Palmer's Cove in July, we could probably, fecal coliform read is something I could do in a lab. It's not that difficult. We could do that with UConn, but as far as using them for the official sampling, it's just not going to happen. We have butted our heads up against this issue. Back before my time, the state used to do everything as far as sampling. They had boats and personnel, and then with state budgets and finances being what they are, or have been for a number of years, They got away from that, and they essentially, it's probably not too strong to say, they dumped the sampling requirements on the various towns. It's taken, I think we have a very good program together now where I coordinate with Stonington and Waterford, 3 towns, and it's an interesting dance to try to do this, because for taking water samples, we have to take at a certain tidal stage. The state in Milford can only accept those water samples maybe the first 3, maybe 4 days of the week, because they have to incubate the samples once we bring them down there for 24 hours and then read them. They don't work weekends. The towns, of course, all have their different schedules. Waterford faces issues with not being able to sample near low tide because of their waters. And then this time of year especially, small craft one is a safety concern that I think the commission, and I certainly, since I'm out there with Paul Watts, in all types of weather, we try to keep as safe as possible out there, especially during the winter months. Fecal coliform is what we are sampling for. I could probably offline, if you want to hear the whole sampling program, take you through it. It's fairly extensive as far as how many samples we have to take a month. We have certain, if we get over an inch of rain, we have a 1-inch trigger that shuts us down completely until we can resample, take water samples, get good fecal coliform results, and then we can be opened up again. This is all incorporated now into the plan as far as exactly what triggers a shutdown, like a sewer bypass or something like that, and what we have to do to get open again. And as I said, red tide has become an issue, especially up in Gulf of Maine and Cape Cod, and seems to be filtering down here, so we've been taking plankton samples. Long story short, I think we have an efficient program that ensures that we are getting the samples, and with some efficiency, both fiscal and physical, we're getting those down to the lab by coordinating with the other towns.
Thank you for that. And I'd like to kind of consolidate the 2 other questions I have into one for the purposes of time. But in the case of, in Groton, in the coming years, we'll be looking to upgrade its WCPA plans, to ensure that, when it's in compliance with our own, regulations, but, it's beginning to become outdated, and that's going to represent a pretty sizable amount of dollars that we'll have to expend for, in our budgets in the future. So when we're thinking about that and we're looking at, making conditionally approved areas into approved areas for shell fishing, are there any efforts we can kind of undertake as we're planning that upgrade to, consider some areas that could be used for more shell fishing in the future?
We recently, in the winter months, have enabled direct harvest in the Mystic River because they upgraded their plant to a UV plant from chlorine, and it's improved the Mystic River to the point where our commercial people can direct harvest almost up to the first marina in the Mystic River in the winter months when there's no boats in the water. But that's a really boon to their operation, because prior to that they were required to go harvest their stuff and take it way out past Noank Shipyard in February and leave it for 2 weeks and then go back out and get it before they could ship it. And now they can harvest it once, bring it in, bag it, and ship it. And that's took 7 years of water sampling. That was 21 samples at least every month, or sometimes twice a month, in the Mystic River, all the way up to the sewer outfall. So we're working at it. And yes, that could happen if they upgrade the plant to a better quality.
There's also an initiative, and we've all been involved with this, but with the city of Groton, to at least look at Baker's Cove and the possibility of opening that. There are commercial leases there. Recreationally, it's shut down. I think it's going to be a challenge because of the marinas and the development in that watershed. I know the city of Groton and the mayor over there has been very involved with this working group. Essentially, it's investigating the watershed there, sources, non-point sources of pollution, concentrating a lot on the geese. I don't want to blame the geese for every evil under the sun, but they certainly, I think, contribute to some of the fecal coliform concerns that we see with our water quality sampling. So that is ongoing right now. Where that goes, I'm not quite sure, but the state has been very supportive of opening, wherever possible, recreational opportunities and commercial opportunities. And I can see certainly with Groton and with Stonington, my work with the Stonington Commission and Waterford, that it's a good partnership. And I think all the commissions are looking as much as possible to increase commercial access and recreational access to town and state waters. Town waters, of course, is really our mandate here.
We really can't overemphasize how important the working relationships that Dick and that Roger have spoken about are to us. Both the Groton Town Council and the representatives at the state level representing Groton have always been terrific supporters on our part. The one thing that has been a real success that we're very proud of over the years is going back before the year 2000. Actually, a prior shellfish commissioner wanted to make sure that there was a good use made to a derelict property at the time in Noank. We actually, Roger and I got assigned to be sent up to Hartford to deal with Lenny Winkler. Lenny was a very strong supporter. At that time, a little bit of history, the Yukon facility was planning on selling that property. Locals were concerned that it would become a condominium or something in a small Noank village. There were steps taken in support of the town of Groton such that the property was ultimately transferred to the town of Groton. And there were arrangements that were made by you or your predecessors such that that facility would be used by a co-op. And that's what Roger was referring to, that has had so much success. That actually goes back a little over 20 years that started. So it's taken a lot of effort through the years to get that to be successful.
I'd like to mention that the co-op, through some of its members, has just recently purchased property on the Thames River, south of the Gold Star Bridge, where they'll restore the dock, number one, which was 170 feet long, in order to work the Thames River without having to drive all the way from Noank with their boats every day to work the Thames. The Thames at one time was a very productive river for oysters, and there's beds that have been there for at least maybe 100 years, all the way up to the old Norwich Hospital. So it takes you up into Preston. And so they'll operate from the Thames in the city of Groton and be able to work the beds all the way up to the old Norwich Hospital, which is, that'll be something if we can bring the Thames River back.
Agreed. Okay, we have lots of questions. Franco, Bordelon, Aubrey, Heed.
So you gave us, well, in our packet, there's 83 pages of reading we had. So there's a lot of information in here, and I appreciate the importance of everything your commission does, and I think it's so vitally important to our area. And I just have some questions, because this is not my, I'm in accounting. This is not something that I know a lot about. So I have on our packet, page 91, I'm just going to ask, is it, on number 10, it says, any person who violated any shellfish regulation is subject to a fine of not more than $50 or imprisonment of not more than 30 days or both. And I was wondering, is this a state statute?
That's a good question. I really do
I
not
think it is,
know.
but I
It
couldn't
may-
swear to it.
I was just wondering, have we ever put anybody in jail for 30 days for?
I've never even written a ticket. We're dealing with shellfish here. I feel that the wardens are out there to educate, basically. 90% of the population out there is aware of the program and complying with it. Especially during the summer, we get some of the day trippers, and they take maybe a little bit of understanding and education on my part. Then there's maybe about 2% of the people that just don't get it or don't want to. But though I have the ability to write a ticket, and the senior warden has the ability to write a ticket, I think we've written one ticket.
So
We
the
are
most-
out there, they know we're out there.
So in the most part, if you find somebody that just say that
It's happened
it's too small,
historically.
you just
We
ask them to
have
put them back.
Given them tickets
Okay.
years ago.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen very often.
We don't, the worst punishment I can give someone, I think, is when they come in and they've got a bucket of clams and they do not have a permit. And I take the clams away from them and put them back in the water. It gets their attention.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There is some history on that, and I think the answer to your question rests primarily within our relationship with the town of Groton. We don't do anything that has to do with legalities without going through the town of Groton Police Department. And so Dick has been referring to all of the things that he doesn't do. If there were someone that were giving them difficulty, the instructions are that they call one of two sources, either the town of Groton Police Department or the state personnel that are
DEP.
responsible in this area.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm hearing a lot about seeding and stocking. And so, I mean, they reproduce, but are they just not doing it at a pace that fills the area beds? Is that why you're seeding and
Yes,
restocking?
we have too much demand.
Yeah.
The demand's that high?
Yes.
We sell average about 1,200 to 1,500 permits, which we were just down at the Shellfish. Every year, the state puts together a meeting of all the various shellfish commissions along the shoreline. And Groton sells more permits than any other town. It's a big program. We regulate, of course, based on size, but especially if you go out to the Pequannock River on a nice day in July when we're open, I may have 20, 30 people out there, and they're all allowed to take 2 gallons a peck of clams. So we do, yes, we stock oysters. Oyster season is strictly during the winter. I feel that especially the hard shell clams, there's a lot of pressure, cohogs, a lot of pressure on that from the shell fishermen, and that's why we've been so desperately looking for sources to stock, which now it looks like we have a potential dredger online over Stonington Way and a potential nursery source up in Massachusetts, which will have to get the permits and the authorization from the state to bring clams from Massachusetts across state lines. There's a concern about introducing, if there's something up there, we don't want to introduce that problem down here.
Yeah, definitely not.
In past years, we have actually purchased as much as $10,000 in stock, clams to seed, so that people can turn around and take them out after we put them in.
Wow.
This past year, because of difficulty in making purchases, it's quite literally been impossible. We've had basically a non-existent program as far as the seeding. We're very much hands-on group. We're getting older, but essentially we're the ones that put the clams in the water, and we get great help from not only the people that have supplied them in the past, but by commercial interests helping us as we need help in that regard. So we have varied. For example, I think in this past year, we were close to zero on the ability to add clams, but we've been as high as 10,000. That's our intention, to get back up to that, and that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, and my final question is, why are scallops so elusive in our area?
Water quality concerns. You probably know some of the history. Niantic Bay was probably one of the primary scallop beds in Connecticut, if not in New England, for many years. Scallops are particularly, they need eelgrass. They provide some cover, especially when they're at a young stage. Because of eutrophication, and this is either sewage that hasn't been fully treated or people on their own septic systems that are not fully functional, when you introduce phosphates and especially nitrogen, nitrates into a small water body that doesn't flush a lot, you get algal blooms, microscopic algae. That essentially coats the eelgrass and prevents the eelgrass from photosynthesizing, kills the eelgrass. The eelgrass goes, the scallops go. We're starting to see with improvements to various treatment plants, better stormwater regulations. This is huge. The state has been pushing stormwater regulations. MS4, you guys have all dealt with it in Groton. As water quality improves, the eelgrass comes back and it provides the correct habitat for scallops. But it's been really hit or miss. We're actually quite excited that we're seeing the airport of all, they actually called us out because they were concerned that we were stocking the Quantic River. Seagulls were supposedly taking oysters, clams, whatever, and dropping them on the runway. I understand their concerns. It's not a good thing if you're coming in at 80 knots in a Cessna and you hit a quahog shell. So they spent a lot of money at the airport blowing shells off the runway. We met with them. They took us out on the runway. We were shocked to see that most of the shells, and there was shells 2 inches thick on the side of the runway that had been blown off, were scallop shells. So we believe there's a potentially a robust population of scallops out there. Needs to be assessed.
The last big scallop season we had, there were no scallops within a 24-hour, 2-day period. They appeared all over the place.
Oh,
They
wow.
move.
Oh,
Nobody can
Yeah, we've
predict.
heard stories from the old timers who said they've been out in Fisher's Island Sound and the water is seething and they look at what's going on and it's scallops heading into the bays. I don't know if that's true or they were drinking something, but they swear it's true.
well, thank you all for all your answers, and keep up the good work.
All right, Councilors Bordelon, Aubry, and Heed.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work and dedication you guys give to this. It's so important. And you guys are the eyes and ears of what's going out there in the waters. You know, the water testing that you do is, really important to know, not only for the food chain, but for the fishermen and other entities and around that use the waterways recreationally. So I do appreciate all the hard work you guys do and give to the town and have for many years. I think it's exciting and important that you are increasing the fees, considering the amount of work and seeding you guys do. So that's exciting to see. I also like the fact that you guys incorporate more of the state water sampling compliance regulations. So that's and just the looking at your focus and where you guys are going. I think the website would be awesome. Having that and with the information on when the beds are closed and other links and things, I think it will be some more user-friendly links and things to go to, so that will be exciting to see. I'm in full support and can't wait to see how that all turns out. And it's exciting that the scallops may be back in abundance, so that's a sure test to the clearing of the waters and for people making it a priority to not allow certain things to go into our waters anymore. So, but anyway, it's really exciting. And my question is, do you think if we're not able to seed the beds, like you said, there was a year where you couldn't seed them for the certain clams, would you guys end up decreasing the amount of permits or the size that they can carry out? Or how would that possibly?
Well, that's a consideration. We hope we don't have to.
You don't hope to not get there. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Aubry, and then Heed.
I think everybody said everything I had to ask, so I would just thank you again. You guys always come and do a great presentation, and we appreciate what you do very, very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Heed.
I'm hungry. So a question that I would have is, are there docks or ramps or access points around town that you think for the users, for the recreational sports people, that we should be looking at improving or working on or adding? Or is it all, do you think, ample?
I would say the reason we shut down Mumford Cove about 5 years ago, and we understand, everyone understands, Mumford Cove is very much like Groton Long Point. It is a private, non-gated, gated community. And there was friction with clamors, either people from the town or even, and I've heard anecdotal stories that, oh, geez, there were 10 license plates from Rhode Island, parked on our private property. So we shut down there because of access issues. We revisited that decision and said, geez, if you have a boat, you can certainly get into Mumford Cove, and anything below mean high water, of course, is federal state water. And we, I think, are trying to educate the public that you can park at Bluff Point, and it's a bit of a walk in there, but you could walk the old trolley line and get over to Mumford Cove. I wish we had some other access. I'm not sure how that would happen, but I wish we had other shoreline access to Mumford Cove, though I am at a loss what that might be.
I think the town had a bike route they wanted to propose through that area too. And they didn't pursue it too much, I think. There is a way to get in.
Yeah. It'd be great. We are very fortunate in having public access to our Area E, which is Palmer Cove, and you park right at Esker Point. Some of the problem there, of course, is the western side of Area E is Groton Long Point, where when I have the water sample there, the police know me, but you park your car there without a sticker, and 5 minutes later you're going to have a ticket. So, but there is access in from one place. I think our really primary area, and we are very fortunate compared to some of the other towns I've talked to, with Bluff Point, that we have a state property there, extreme adequate parking, more than adequate parking, and it's right on the Pequannock River, which is, I would say we probably do 95% of our shellfish, recreational shellfish business in the Pequannock River. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource, and it has great access.
All right, thank you.
And my question was already asked. I was concerned about the labs and the testing, and I understand now that there probably won't be a third lab anytime soon. So, but it's good to hear you're making do and you're co-op working with the two other municipalities to try to save some time and energy for each town. I don't think there are any other questions. All right, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming out. We will vote on 2020-108 Shellfish Management Plan. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. Thank you again. We appreciate your work and for your effort tonight in the presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We are on to 2020-73, recommendation of 2020 golf rates. This is on page 149, and we are on Councilor Bordelon.
Sorry, 1 second. I have it right here. I just flipped it closed. I make a motion to recommend a resolution approving the 2020 golf rates.
Second.
Moved by Bordelon and seconded by Heed. And we have several people here to talk to us about golf rates this evening. So as soon as you gentlemen are set, you can introduce yourselves and tell us all about it.
Good evening, Mark Berry, Director of Parks and Recreation. To my left is Eric Morrison.
I'm sorry, it's difficult to hear. Gentlemen? Okay, we're ready to move on to the golf rates. Mr. Berry, please. Thank you.
Again, Mark Berry, Director of Parks and Recreation. To my left is Eric Morrison, Superintendent of the golf course. To my right is Todd Goodhue, who is the golf pro. So annually, we come to the council for approval of setting the rates for the golf course. Just to give you a little bit of background, the way this process works is it starts at the Golf Advisory Board level. The Golf Advisory Board met in January, and we discussed setting the rates for 2020. We had a subsequent meeting in February where those rates were again discussed, and a recommendation was presented to the Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission. At the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, golf staff attended that meeting, and there was a discussion about the rates. At that point, the commission set rates, the commission provided a recommendation to the council. At the Golf Advisory Board meeting, the recommendation to the commission was not to increase the rates. However, at the Parks and Recreation Commission level, after a discussion with the staff, the recommendation was to increase most of the rates by 5%, with the exception of youth rates, tournaments, and the golf cart rates. The suggestion by the staff is that we accept the commission's recommendation of increasing the rates by 5%.
So the Parks and Rec Commission recommendation to increase rates?
Yes, that is correct.
Are there questions for Mr. Berry or other staff? Councilor Bordelon.
Thank you for the presentation. You kind of hit on one of the questions I actually was going to have. Based on the 5% of the areas that you spoke about, being the youth rates, the golf cart rates, and the tournaments, I see that the winter rates did not go up.
Right, so the rates that the council approves are actually just the peak season rates. And even within that peak season, what the staff will do is we will look at future tee registrations or bookings, and if we feel that an adjustment needs to be made to try to increase the number of people out on the golf course, we will make those adjustments. That's usually done by the golf pro. He'll look at, up pending tee times and say, it looks like there's a lull here, so let's try to get, 60% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So he will adjust the rates so that, like I said, at least we can get some people out onto the golf course.
My last question, looking at your resident rates and non-resident rates, what does one need to prove they're resident or non-resident when they are being evaluated for the fees?
Tattoo.
Like, do you guys keep any records of, how many non-residents do we have enrolled in the season passes versus non-residents and such?
Well, mostly we take them at their word. If a person comes up and says they're a resident, we know most of our customers.
Yeah, as a member, they have to fill out an application.
Okay. I was just curious to see, because I was just wondering if you guys did any, because I know for Parks and Rec, activities you have to ask. I'm curious as to, I know other towns, you have to show like a copy of a bill or something.
I thought you were talking about daily rates.
No, I'm looking at just in the season rates and such. Do you guys take copies of, proof of residence?
For memberships, they have to provide information like a piece of mail or their license.
Or their license,
But for a daily fee, if they come up and they say, I'm a resident, we know many of our residents, and so we charge them accordingly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilor Franco.
So I have reviewed this, and just had two items here. So one of them is, why was the payment plan option removed?
Why was the what?
The payment plan option, I have it on our page 156. It says the town offers a payment plan, and that's all crossed off.
Very few people had opted for that, less than 10. of all that signed up for a membership, which is over 200. And so what the payment plan basically was is that they would pay the first month 1/3, and then most had a lot of difficulty making the second payment. So basically, we felt that it was almost like usury. They played for 1 month, but they paid for 1/3 of a membership.
Okay.
And so by the policy, they could not play again unless they made the second payment.
Okay.
So that's why.
All right, so another question I have is on page 157, and it's regarding a refund policy of seasonal playing privileges. So item number 4 is the golfer must submit a letter of request for the reason for the request, including any appropriate supporting document, like a doctor's note. So I think, I don't know how to say it in a nice way. I think actually asking somebody who's looking for a refund for doctor's notes that may potentially disclose somebody's medical conditions that have a potential to get leaked to the community or be told to other people that may not know what. I think, because I work in the medical industry, and I think that this is a big area of issue.
I'm going to jump in for 1 second. We have 2 golf items tonight, and that is actually under 2020-64, which is the second one. But I understand it does kind of
I
pertain because we're
apologize.
talking money.
I'll wait on that one then, if you'd like me to. We'll talk about the money first. All right.
Both
I'll
of these
wait.
things did kind of pertain to money.
Prepare,
but-
that one's coming.
You're ready? Okay. All right, so is there anything else on the rates at this point? Councilor Aubrey.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question that I hope you'll understand. Do you have any idea the ratio of women to men that play golf?
Across the country or
No,
at Shinnecock?
at our golf course, at our golf course.
Maybe 10%.
Okay. I'm wondering if, in the future, not this year, you've gotten things together, and I think that's great, but I'm wondering if maybe there could be some things that could be done that might bring more women out to play golf. I don't have any idea what it would be, but I think there needs to be incentives in order to bring the women in. I have a daughter-in-law that plays golf. I have a lot of friends that play golf. They don't come to our course, and I don't know what the reason is. I guess I should find out. But it would seem to me that maybe there would be something that we could do. I think now we're at a point that the bathrooms have been improved a little bit, or it's in the process, or it's going to be done, or I don't know exactly where we are with it. That would probably help. But it seems like with that small an amount, we need to be doing something to make it a little bit more inviting for women. So I'd just like to have you put that in your thought process for the year ahead. And maybe we could come up with some ideas.
We have tried. I mean, my assistant and myself, we've done Learn to Play with a Friend, and it was aimed really towards the lady golfer, or the potential lady golfer. Very low payment to get into the program. It was learn golf from not having ever played until the 6th lesson. You're on the golf course with either myself or Casey, and you're playing. And it was less than $100 per person. We have equipment that we provide at no cost. We have balls and tees that we provide at no cost. Golf is facing a very difficult period of time in getting juniors and ladies and really across the spectrum of people to try the game and to stay with the game. It's a very challenging game to learn to play and then to get into it and then to play. And so we're open to everything. And in the industry, the PGA has initiatives. Every year they come out with an initiative trying to get people to try. and to participate.
Do you still have a Women's Day like you used to have?
We do.
Okay. I'm not trying to critique you. I'm
No,
just
no, I
trying
understand.
to,
I sympathize, and we're open, and we're here, and we're wanting to.
I'm wondering if, as you think about this, maybe in the future, we have a lot of women's business groups now. And I'm wondering if maybe occasionally going to them and telling them what you have available and what you can do for women and what would they like to see done for women. And maybe we could be the first course that does the outreach to really try to reach the female population to come and, I hope our lady back there is not moving because I'm upsetting her. But I think we need to do an outreach program for it. And I think we need to find out, what their feelings are and try to make that grow.
We have some terrific women representatives on the Golf Advisory Board, and I will make sure that at the next meeting, this issue is discussed. And I would be curious if you have an opportunity, I think you said your daughter-in-law plays quite a bit of golf, but won't play at Shinnecossett. I would really be interested in hearing why, and if we are in some way, exclusionary and making women feel uncomfortable at the course. That would certainly be something that we would like to be made aware of.
Okay, I'll absolutely find out and share that with you. But
okay,
as I said, I want to see more women out there. I want to see that part of it grow. The Rotary this year, when we do our tournament, we're going to have longest drive for women. We haven't had that in the past. We're going to have a few other things to try to make it so it's a little bit more creative and try to up the interest. So I think it's something that we could all work together on. But I definitely will find out. I appreciate you listening because, like I say, very satisfied with this year. I'm looking towards next year.
Well, we are too.
I hope I'm here.
So back to the rates. I have a question. Okay. Yeah, thanks. So there was discussion between what the Golf Advisory Board had recommended and what the Parks Commission had recommended. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to clarify the rationale for the difference and for the increase in the rates and why you think it's a good idea to do, please.
Sure. So the Golf Advisory Board, as I mentioned earlier, their proposal was not to increase the rates. And the discussion centered around the fact that if you look at the day rates, Shinnecossett is on the higher end of the courses that we look at when making a decision about what we're going to charge, because we don't operate in a vacuum. We have to look at what other people are charging. And one of the plans was that we would promote the fact that we didn't raise the rates, and we would use that as kind of a marketing incentive moving forward. That information was presented to the commission. The commission felt that in looking at the proposed budget for next year and the fact that we're proposing to use fund balance, and last year we came up $150,000 short, that we needed to adjust the rates in order to try to take one step towards resolving the increasing challenge of operating the golf course. The commission also felt that Shinnecossett is unique in that it offers vistas and views that aren't available to other courses, and that golfers would be willing to pay a little bit more for that experience. And that actually has been reflected in the survey results that we conduct a survey, a golfer satisfaction survey, every 2 years. And one of the questions we ask is, what are the determining factors when you make a decision to play at Shinnecossett? And the number one choice, or number one factor rather, is location. The second one is the course itself. So with that information, the commission felt that that Shinnecock was just a little bit more unique and that people were willing to pay for that experience. And there's a couple of other things that I think will potentially help to offset any negative impact of the rate increase. And one of the things that we did over this past winter is we have changed our golf software registration system, and it's a much more user-friendly system. And one of the key aspects about that is that it also, we can capture an email address. So by making the reservation online, easy to use on their phone, that's going to appeal to a broader number of golfers, because that's where everybody's headed now. You know, the old system of calling in and saying, hey, I want to book a time, that's going away. That still happens, but it's going away. And yeah, so, you know, for those reasons, we feel like increasing the rates will be able to, like I said, overcome any type of impact that, you know, increasing the rates may have. Now, if, you know, weather is a huge factor, and if we have another spring like we did last year, where we had, I think, 13 weekends in a row where it rained part of either Saturday or Sunday, you know, you don't recover from that, because if you don't play golf on Saturday because of rain, you don't play twice on Sunday. So once that round is lost, that round is lost. So the weather and the prediction of weather are two huge influences. You know, if they start saying that looks like it's going to be stormy over the weekend on Tuesday, people make other plans, and then, you know, when Friday rolls around, oh, it's changed. Well, at that point, it's too late because they've made other plans. So.
I just wanted to say for the listening public that does not have the rate sheet in front of them, the increase is nominal. It's $1 or $2 across the board. But I do appreciate the fact that you are looking ahead and trying to build a little bit of a buffer so that we can help upkeep the course.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Councilor Bordelon.
I just had a quick question. Maybe you could help just clarify, and also just because people watch and to encourage play. What are the age cutoffs for your youth, your senior, where does that start, and your family? Is there a number on those? I was just curious, like how those are arranged. So how many can fall under the family season and the family limited? What size is a family?
It's any size.
Any size, so it's open-ended. Okay. And then the youth?
Youth is 21 and under.
21 and under.
Right. And senior is 62 or older as of 1/1 of the year.
Okay. And then looking at the limited members, it seems like the youth falls under a limited member, and they have limited play. Have you guys thought of maybe opening that up as just a consideration to, I know that you said that you guys have trouble getting the youth more involved in this. Is there a possibility, once again, obviously not changing it now, just a suggestion or a thought or consideration, I should say, of making the youth not a limited member and allowing them a little bit, so they don't have limited times?
We haven't gone that far yet.
Okay.
In the past few years, it has gone, the limited membership would start at 3 o'clock on the weekends. And we have progressively backed that to noon time now to try to gain some more play.
Also, my other question or concern is the senior citizens being considered a limited member, only allowed to play Monday through Friday. You know, it has stipulations. To give the full senior discount, one would think that they shouldn't have limited time. Once again, if there's not an increase in play, maybe opening up that season pass, so they don't fall under the limited guidelines. I don't know, I'm thinking outside the box. I just think if I was a senior, I would have more time to go. I would one May, and I wouldn't want to fall under limited.
So the seniors choose to pay something less to play Monday through Friday because most of them are retired. The folks that pay the full rate, most of them only play Saturday and Sunday morning. And so the reason why they pay the higher rate is for that access. So we're giving a discount to our senior folks because they have time that they can play pretty much any time. And so that's Monday through Friday, and they choose to do that. And then after 12 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. So
I guess I'm just thinking, I mean.
it's fairly typical across the board in the golf industry.
All right, I'm
And
just
it
checking.
works for most everyone.
And for youth as well, so they fall under limited as well.
Right, really the only restriction for the kids is on Saturday and Sunday before 12 o'clock.
Okay.
Councilor Baumgartner.
So, thank you, Mayor. I know we have a motion on the floor to recommend a resolution to increase the rates, but those increased rates will largely pay for, the operating costs of the actual golf course. And, it goes without question that there are many other golf courses, kind of even within the state. You take a look at Stanley Golf Course. The city there has poured a ton in facilities. And so I think that's something in the short and long term, really Groton should look to, especially with Par 4 being a very popular restaurant. And most certainly, the folks you're bringing in from all throughout the state and, New England to play at Shenny, I think we should probably have that discussion too. So, will those increased rates pay for any future upgrades, or, you again cited that those increased rates would pay for the operating costs of actually, maintaining the existing golf course. So, but that again will not cover the costs of investing in kind of the facilities in the future, which we really need to. So I'm answering my own question, but
Okay.
I'm just saying, I think the council and certainly the town should be looking to do that because, again, every other town is really upgrading their facilities, and it's just something that I think we ought to do to encourage, the future generations to continue playing there.
We'll keep that thought as we go through the budget process.
Okay.
We do have some items.
So I think everybody has had a chance except Councilor Melendez. Is there anything you wanted to say, sir? All right, so then we will vote on 2020-73, getting a weird sound. Recommendation of 2020 golf rates. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? So moved unanimously. Thank you. And now we are on to page 151, 2020-64, review of golf rules and regulations. I believe this is Councilor Melendez.
I make a motion to recommend a resolution approving the proposed changes to the rules and regulations. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Melendez and seconded by Heed. And we're going to go straight to Councilor Franco.
Okay, back to my question. So in the refund policy, as I stated, the golfer must submit a letter of request with the reason for the request, including any appropriate support documents, doctor's notes. So I just think if you're dealing with somebody's medical information that's usually very protected and private, I'm not sure this should actually go in to this section. I think there's some huge liabilities.
Well, actually, the question of the documentation is more in the way of a medical credit. So we don't entertain the idea of a refund the first year. We've had members who have purchased the membership and then literally that morning slipped and broken her wrist. So she could not play the entire season. So she was given an entire medical credit. The refund question is on the second year, if for that medical reason they cannot play and it doesn't look like they can play again. So then the director entertains the idea of, instead of extending the credit, to go ahead and refund the original cost of the membership. And
I'm not disputing any kind of refund or credit. That's not what the point of what I'm trying to state. My statement is actually about knowledge of anybody's medical condition whatsoever. as a town employee, because this is very
No, if they say
protected.
they cannot play, I mean, we don't ask for medical documents or
It's,
anything like that.
I'm just letting you know, your documentation here says that they need to submit a letter with a reason with supporting documentation, and it says, like, as an example, a doctor's note.
Right, that's for like a broken wrist or for a torn rotator cuff or something like that, so
Mr.
that they
Berg
can get
wanted to
credit.
jump in.
How about before it comes back next week, I try to get an answer and we can adjust for next week.
Thank you, because I did talk to Ms. Dugan before tonight regarding this, and there's a lot of liability right there.
Yeah, so I think, the extent of the doctor's note would just be, in his medical opinion, they can no longer play golf, and we're not asking for a particular diagnosis. We just need confirmation that,
I'll talk to the
that they
attorney.
can't play golf.
I just think the whole thing has a lot of issues right there that you could be
Yeah.
opening up the town for. So-
Well, I'm not going to argue that, but I think part of the reason is, we're trying to avoid the situation where someone decides, oh, I just don't want to play golf, so I want a refund. So
No,
if we
I
can-
fully understand all
Yeah.
of that. I really do. I truly do.
We just have to make sure we're in line with HIPAA requirements.
There's laws regarding people's medical privacy, and if for some reason there was an accident and somebody said, oh, why isn't Mary coming anymore? And somebody that works there says, oh, well, Mary had a stroke. And this is the reason they found out. This is a huge liability.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say. That's all.
Did you have other things as well?
No, I just asked the question as why the other
Did you get your
item was
other
removed.
answer?
I'm answered. Thank
Okay.
you.
Counselor Heath?
Thank you.
Question on the golf carts, are they gas powered or electric?
Yes.
Gas. Any interest or any effort moving forward to go to electric?
In order to have an electric golf cart, you would have to have a facility, a building that can carry 70 chargers and space for 70 vehicles. We don't have the space, and we don't have the area to even acquire the space and to build the space. So a gas-powered cart is really the most economical and best way to go.
Sounds like you put some thought into it. Thank you.
Any other questions on the regulations? All right, very good. We will vote on 2020-64 review of the golf rules and regulations. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Abstaining?
I'm abstaining, yes.
6 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Franco. I think that's it. You're staying for parks, right?
I am, yes.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen from the golf course. Thank you, members of the Parks and Rec and Golf Advisory Board that stayed. Appreciate it. We are on 2020-105 Parks and Recreation Update. And this is on page 159. And there is no motion because it's just a presentation by our Parks and Rec staff. So as soon as everyone is settled in, I believe we all have a copy of a PowerPoint that was provided leading Groton's future. If you'd like to refer to this, I'm assuming this is what Mr. Lockin's going to put up on the screen.
We're actually all going to make a presentation, yes.
I'm sorry?
We're all making a presentation, not
Oh,
just
okay.
Jerry, yes.
Package
Yes.
still? Excellent. So would you start by introducing your team, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm still Mark Berry, the Director of Parks and Recreation. To my far right is Jessica Patterson. She is the Community Outreach Coordinator. To my immediate right is Mary Jo Riley. She's the Senior Center Supervisor. And to my left is Jerry Locken, who is the Manager of Recreation Services. Sorry. So thank you for this opportunity to present to the council kind of a snapshot of where we are and where we're going. So over the next hour and a half, we're going to be going through all of the slides and talking about a number of different things, talking about opportunities, initiatives and collaboration, challenges, and some decisions that we feel the council is going to have to make it in both the short term and the long term.
Okay, so as elected officials, everybody knows that it's hard to make decisions for long-term betterment of the community when we're also often faced with short-term kind of realities that often happen. So we recognize that, and we recognize the job that everybody, all the town councilors are doing to kind of balance those things. And we're doing our best to kind of give you a sense of what Mark just laid out for you. But sometimes when the question is, can we afford it? I mean, we often hear that. Can we afford to, you name it, do that project? The other side of that question is, can we afford not to? Can we afford not to provide places for our children to, compete athletically? Can we afford not to make an effort at attracting the next generation of workforce that's going to call Groton its home? Can we afford to do these things? Can we afford not to? So that's part of what we're doing, and most of our decisions, I guess, we have general agreement that these are long-term benefits to the town, and we have to somehow get over some of the short-term struggles that we face in order to make some of these things happen and make Groton a place that we really want to affect the quality of life and make this a place where people live, work, and play and share their lives here together. So there are some realities, though, that not everybody is aware of. It's a reality that properties that border the golf course that we just heard about, properties that border parks, are more expensive and generate more in property tax. That's a real thing. So when we invest in those parks, the values of those properties and houses goes up, and the people living there are happier. The town generates more in tax revenue because of our investment in, it spurs tax growth. It spurs the grand list. So when we're making those decisions, we also have partners in the community that are making those decisions as well. We heard about, I think, the C.O.W. property that several councilors went to a presentation. You also have the Restler Homes development that people are talking about at the Mystic Education Center. These are private businesses that understand that you have to invest. There are private businesses stepping forward to do this. If we do this as a town and we make a movement, we can actually make some progress here and impact the quality of life. And for every dollar that we're spending on these parks, or every dollar that we're spending on doing the right thing in town, we're going to get back more in terms of quality of life, livability, and sustainable budgets, frankly, and a sustainable tax base.
So why Groton, right? So for those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to really meet with yet, a big part of my job is going out into the community and connecting with business owners, connecting with community members, with families, with religious groups, and finding out, why do you live here? Why do you work here? What do you play here? And what could we be doing better, right? So kind of the standard situation of questions once I get through the, hi, Jessica, Groton Parks and Recreation, pleasure to meet you, BTW, I do social media, can I put this out? That always happens. One of the big things that we talk a lot about is, well, why would somebody come to Groton as opposed to going to any of the surrounding towns? And why this is important is it's kind of who we're talking to about this. And when we're talking about kind of the future and investing in Groton and like what is of interest to people, so when I'm out with EB, when I'm out with Pfizer, and they, as we all know, are going through some pretty big hiring, right? And they will be continuing to go through some pretty big hiring efforts. So one of the questions that I've been asking is, what are the challenges that you guys have, right? What does success look like to you in the big picture and in the immediate picture? And one of the really interesting kind of challenges that came up was the identification of competition. So they're going out and they're recruiting these young professionals, and the alternative options are going to, say, Boston, going to Cambridge, going to Sacramento, going to Atlanta, going to Ohio. So we say to them, well, why do you want to come to Groton? And this is a very serious question. If you are a younger individual and you're going to make the same amount of money wherever you go, ballpark, right? Why would you come to Groton? And one of the big things that we keep hearing about is, well, there's opportunity. Okay, cool. So let's actually showcase what that opportunity is instead of just saying, hey, we're Groton, we have opportunities. So with the competition side of it, it's how do we make ourselves relevant? How do we distinguish ourselves? And then how do we showcase our value instead of just tell people about it, right? The big things that we've been hearing from the community, from these huge juggernaut corporations that are going out to actively recruit, is that the individuals that they're looking to bring into Groton are looking for affordable housing, they're looking for great transportation options, and from our perspective, kind of the most important part, an active community. And there's a ton of different ways that you can define that, but that's the big thing that I just kind of want you guys to percolate around in your head is, what does an active community mean from your perspective, and then kind of what does it mean from the community's perspective? So we really need to be able to showcase the value that Groton has, the distinction and kind of the relevancy that we have as a growing business, and when I say business, I mean like town, right? As we have lots of opportunity here. Not only are we attracting these new people because of the recruitment that's going on, but we have another huge employer here, the Navy base. People stay here because they like to be here. Sailors stay here when they retire, their families come back here. It's a huge asset to our community, and I think it's one of the definition points that we have. Like Groton, we are military-centric, and we're very proud of that collectively, right? What are we doing to make sure that those people want to stay here? And this goes back to kind of the investment. And so we're not just talking about attracting those newer, younger people, but we're also keeping the people that are staying, that want to stay here, that have been taxpayers, that have put their kids through our schools, that are active in our community events. The other side of it is, and I'm going to have to take people's word for this, but the baby boomer generation, the perspective has changed a little bit in that engaging in activities, being more social, being out and about, and utilizing parks as a safe, active, healthy way to do that. It's kind of what we're hearing from people that, hey, that means something to us. Okay, so again, why Groton? Because we're great. And from a Parks and Recs perspective, how does what we do and what we've defined as like the vision of Groton, how does that all play into this, right? So we have our 4 pillars of service, which without looking, I can tell you because I say this all of the time, health and wellness, economic development and activity, social equity, and conservation, right? Those are all of the things that right now, when I go out and I talk to businesses, I say, hey, these are our 4 pillars, these are what we stand on, and it's not just something that we say, hey, this is important to us, but it really helps us make a lot of the decisions that we have from a day-to-day base on who we want to partner with, messaging that we want to get across, and ultimately, what are we looking to do in the next 5 years and in the next 10 years? And the cool problem that we have run into, we have so many businesses in Groton and in greater Groton area, so I'm including like the Stonington side of Mystic, that because we do industry exclusive events, so for example, if we have 5 local banks, for them to ensure that they're able to find success at the end of sponsoring an event such as the upcoming Mystic Irish 5K, we don't want 5 banks competing for space, right? We want 1 bank there so they can talk to individuals. And this is, again, something that the community has said, if we're gonna be a bank, we wanna be the only bank there, not one of 5 banks there. We literally don't have enough community events for all of the businesses and the community partners that we have talked to be able to sponsor. What a cool problem.
Love it.
We need to address that.
All right, so current initiatives. We are working on a number of initiatives right now. We're working with a consultant to identify community needs. We're planning on doing a community-wide recreation needs assessment. Some of that information we're going to take and apply to the Mystic Ed Center, specifically the Pratt Recreation Building, which I'm sure you're all aware of that. They will also be doing an engineering analysis and a feasibility study. The department is currently going through agency accreditation. And, you know, when we're completed that project, we will be probably one of less than 200 departments across the country that are accredited, and I think there's over 12,000. So I think we will be like in the top 1% of departments across the country. It's a huge initiative. The entire staff is on board with doing this, and it's going to take us the next 12 to 14 months to get through that process. The Senior Center just went through reaccreditation, and they are working on applying what came out of that accreditation process. They just completed the barriers to participation study and are going to be implementing some of the recommendations that were presented to the council a couple of months ago. In the area of social equity, and we'll talk a little bit about this in upcoming slides, in the budget, we've proposed a mobile recreation program where we've identified areas in the community that we're not reaching and that aren't accessible, and we're proposing a mobile recreation program where instead of sitting back thinking, well, they ought to come to us, we're kind of flipping that and saying, no, we ought to be going to them. We're also trying to address the food insecurity issue, which has been identified, and we're also introducing drop-in programming. And again, this will be discussed in an upcoming slide. In the area of conservation, we're working with the Nature Conservancy on some resiliency projects here in Groton. And we're also going to be working with Grasso Tech again to extend further the beach grass down at Esker Point Beach to try to take more steps to protect that beach from the issues of erosion that we've seen over the years. So the other thing that we're doing is a lot of collaborating. We are, as you know, Jerry made a presentation a couple of weeks ago to try to address the athletic field issue. We're going to be moving forward with that, and there's a number of other collaborations that I'm going to turn over to Jerry to discuss.
So the list of collaborations is dozens, and we picked a couple of here just to kind of highlight, but for example, the first one we have listed there, diversity, equity, and inclusion, commonly you might hear DEI. We have a DEI committee in town. Parks and Recreation is a leader on that committee. In fact, Jessica is the chair of that committee. We're out looking for ways that the town can provide services that adequately reflect the diversity in our community, and that we provide our services in an equitable way, and that we include people. I mean, that is in line with our pillars. That is absolutely what we're interested in doing. And some of those things that Mark just mentioned about mobile recreation and things like that, that is absolutely what's spurring us into thinking those things and to doing things a little bit differently than we've done before. So with another one there, the Groton Parks Foundation, I hope to see some of you at our gala coming up here on Friday night already. We're not nervous. It's going to go well.
Totally not nervous. Very excited.
But yeah, the Groton Parks Foundation is a 501c3 organization that's been around for many years. But recently we've worked with their board of directors to, spur some more interest and fundraising and, support from that organization. So the funds that they raise are going to come back directly to the town and to our department to make improvements. So, I think we see that as a very key collaboration. And just another one to point out that Mark mentioned earlier, the food insecurity. We have identified a problem at the library with kids going there after school, middle school age kids, high school age kids, hanging out at the library, and there's, a certain amount of problems, and on Monday nights, they kind of, once the doors open at the community meals over at the senior center, they, march across the parking lot and head over there. Working with the police, the library staff, Parks and Rec staff, and the Board of Education, we are soon going to be one of 2 places in Connecticut that offer a after-school supper program. Just like we have a summer food program where people under 18 can come and get like a little bag lunch that's nutritious and well-balanced. Ernie Koshmeter, I can't say enough good things about the man who works, he's the food service director for the Board of Ed. Worked his magic along with some input that we gave him, and we have approval for this, and we're just kind of waiting for some facility upgrades at the Groton Community Center so we can actually house this program. So once that's online, the program, we turn the key and it starts, and kids in Groton will have a place to come and address a little bit of that food insecurity that we have, as well as get some people into the community center to do drop-in programming that we can alleviate some of that pressure at the library. And so all of those types of collaborations we are actively working on, looking for opportunities to do things that better, again, the quality of life, fit in with our pillars, and serve the community.
So to move Groton forward, there's certain decisions that will have to be made. But before we get into those tough decisions, we're going to ask you an easy question. Go ahead and flip it.
So if you are bringing somebody new to Groton, what town building would you first show someone considering moving to Groton? What building are you proud of when you're showcasing something in Groton? Of course, we're going to pick the senior center, but the senior center and the library complex is a good area to show new people. The building is well designed, and it's designed what it's used for. It's in good condition. It's highly utilized. It's welcoming. It's accessible, and it's safe. People love the senior center facility. Okay, Jimmy.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
So, Groton Community Center. Until about 2 months ago, the only people that were using the Groton Community Center were those that could afford to use it. To me, that's not a community center. And we've taken steps, Jerry mentioned, we've introduced an after-school program, a drop-in program where there's no fee for that. As Jerry mentioned also, we're working with the school to provide meals to those that are food insecure. In order for us to reach the full potential of the community center, we need a facility person over there full-time. We put in our budget the proposal to add another staff person to, again, help us meet the full potential of the community center. Without that person, we're not going to be able to do that. So that is part of our proposal that the council will be seeing. We are planning to move the recreation staff over there. That I estimate is going to take, I've been saying this for 8 months, another 12 to 18 months. That will be a good thing when it happens, but it's not going to solve all of our problems. In the long term, we're doing this needs assessment, and we have this, great opportunity with the Pratt Recreation Building. But what we need to figure out is, based on the community needs, how does the community center fit in to what the community wants? There's a number of issues, as of today, as of tomorrow, we should be able to start drinking the water. That was recently tested, And the results came back today, and tomorrow they're going to be flipping all the switches. And, you know, the hand washing stations that have been in the bathroom, those can go. The water dispensers in the hallway, those can go, and we can start moving forward. But there's other issues. There is no security cameras in the building at all. There's no security system. You know, somebody opens the door, we have no way of knowing that. And there's other issues that need to be addressed. So one of the questions is, you know, do we want to continue to put money into a building that wasn't really designed for its current use? We're not offering any opinion. We're just saying that that's a question that the council is going to need to address.
All right, implications of pay-to-play. Fact of the matter is, Groton Parks and Rec is pay-to-play. We have a special revenue fund that's been in existence for about 15 years. The benefits of that we have experienced, and we've actually lauded ourselves for that performance. In those 15 years, tax support for Parks and Rec has gone down. Services have, in some cases, increased, and at least maintained. We've done all of that using a special revenue fund. The fees that people pay for the programs that they participate in, pay for the programs that they participate in. However, what that has effectively done is it has made us pay to play. There are people in town who cannot afford to pay, who do not play, who we are not serving, and that is a fundamental problem for us. And that is something that we are proposing to begin to correct right now. We have, right now in today's budget, as Mark mentioned, drop-in programming that's happening. There is no revenue coming in for that. Our special revenue fund is providing the staff and paying for the bill right now. And we actually in our budget are proposing that we're going to continue to pay for that, but our fund balance. We have a fund balance in the special revenue fund that we've generated over these 15 years. The last couple of years, since we've kind of moved into the community center and expanded programming, we're actually beginning to use fund balance. And we're going to be using fund balance this year. Right now, we're using it, and we're going to be using it next year. The year after that, I guess we're kind of putting the council on notice that we cannot sustain that. The special revenue fund will not support these initiatives that we're doing. It's not going to support mobile recreation that we're going to bring to neighborhoods in the community that are not being served. It's not going to support drop-in programming. We give out about $40,000 a year in financial aid to people. That is, all supported through special revenue. So, it's just something that we need help in solving this issue so that we're not just a pay-to-play program, that we are providing services to everybody. The other kind of impact on program diversity, the way that we choose what programs that we offer, are there enough people that are going to sign up for it? And can we pay the bill at the end of the day? I mean, that's kind of that's what our driving force is in terms of providing program diversity. I know Councilor Obrey, last time I was here, was asking me about cricket players. As funny as it sounds, there are people in town who play cricket. Do we have a cricket program in Parks and Rec? No. Would we be able to do that, and would it be able to pay for itself? Maybe, maybe not. But, having a decision based on should we have this nice diversity of programs just based on people's ability to pay, from a public Parks and Rec standpoint, that's not why I got into this profession, and I don't think I could say that anybody here at this table would agree with that's why we got into this profession. We got into this profession to serve an entire community and provide diverse activities that everybody are interested in. So later on tonight, I guess item next on the agenda is a seasonal and part-time pay plan. As we are facing realities, next year our budget will be increasing, not due to anything that we're doing, but due to the fact that we hire dozens and dozens of minimum wage type workers. First job with Park and Rec, that's a common thing. And our minimum wage is going from $10.10 an hour, what it was before October of last year, up to 15 in about 4 years. That's a huge reality for us, and that shift in the pay plan is going to, right now be funded through special revenue fund. In anticipation of this, right now we are adjusting the programs of every program that we offer for this beginning this summer, price increases for all of our programs. That's reality for us right now. All of our programs are increasing in cost. Drop-in pickleball, going up. Dance classes, going up. Swim lessons, going up. Any program that we are offering, price is going up beginning in the summer. That's just a reality that we have, and the fear that we have is that makes it even more inaccessible to people in our community. Also, I'll just say briefly here, the need for cultural and community events. The Great Blue study that we did in 2018 said quite clearly, people in this town want community and cultural events. We need resources to provide those activities for people. People are clamoring for opportunities to celebrate with their neighbors and friends in this community, and everything that Jessica was mentioning earlier about this people expressing themselves and people having a quality of life and looking for opportunities. That's what we need help in providing. I don't know how I got 2 in a row. So, investment in parks, I guess because of the athletic field task force, I suppose. We have, over the years, the reality with this pay-to-play, and another thing is, when we take all of our programs and things out of the general fund budget and putting them in a special revenue fund, the only things that are left are things that are, in the general fund, are things that are very, I guess they become more vulnerable, because any cuts that we make that impact the tax rate have to be in the general fund. Special revenue fund doesn't affect it, so things that in the general fund do get affected. The parks operation is in the general fund. We have lost thousands of dollars in tax support. We have lost a number of positions due to people who retired or whatever that are not being replaced. We have fewer resources and less staff time, less people looking at planning to address park issues and things like that than we've had in the past, because that's where any of the balancing of the budget has happened, is on the back of parks. So what we have is we have a field shortage. We have aging facilities. We have facilities that are not accessible. We had an accessibility study done several years ago that we have barely scratched the surface on, trying to address all of the issues that were identified in that accessibility study. Safety. I mean, we have right now at the Tercentennial Playground, the biggest and best playground in town, we have 2 pieces of equipment with barriers and caution tape around them because they are broken and in need of repair. That's kind of reality, and we need to, we need support in order to manage that, in order to plan, to make improvements, to continue to provide the services that the people in the town need. Special use facilities, we've been actually pretty successful in special use facilities. Think of the roller hockey arena that was put together and almost rebuilt entirely with a scoreboard put up with the help of people who are interested in the hockey program. We have the Spicer Park dock. People in the rowing community have stepped up and built the dock, and they're also putting more money into trying to make it even more accessible now. The dog park, the Tercentennial Playground, the skate park. All of these facilities, special use, Esker Point beach sand volleyball courts. These communities have stepped forward to try to make these things better, and they've put their own money, time, and effort into it. But it's hard, and I don't know if it's impossible, but it certainly seems like it's impossible for times. If we're only relying on those people that are interested in doing it, that's a pretty hard lift for people. It's a pretty hard lift. So having support in terms of planning, in terms of funding, in terms of staffing, in terms of resources to make these places people where somebody who comes to town sees a place that's where I want to be. That's what we're talking about here, and that's what's sorely been neglected through the recent years, and justifiably so. And I started by talking about short-term, concerns versus long-term concerns. What we're talking about here are long-term concerns, and I know that the town manager here has a budget direction that says, give me a budget increase that's reasonable, or 2% or whatever. These things don't exist or can't be accomplished, given those kinds of constraints. So we're hoping that over time we can make this change into investing in the town to make it better for people, to provide these services, make it a place, and that sustains itself. It comes back to benefit us in many ways, in terms of increased tax base, increase of health outcomes, increase of people wanting to move here. All those things can happen if we do these investments. I think you're first, Jess.
Yes. So what do we need, right? That's kind of why we're here. First and foremost, we need support. So one of the big initiatives that we've been focusing on through the town is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to be coming to present at a future town council meeting on some objectives that we are looking to hit townwide, why it is important. And when I say to us, I don't necessarily mean obviously exclusively us, but why is it important in Groton? Why is the community identified like, hey, these are the types of things that we want to see in the place that we're choosing to raise our family and live and work and hopefully stay? We are excited to talk about that. We are excited to talk about the opportunities, but with every opportunity, there comes a dollar amount, right? We all know that. So just as kind of something to start floating around in the back of the minds that please don't every time you see me think, oh, she's gonna ask for money. It's probably gonna happen, but just, hi, thanks. That's all I have.
All right, so I know we have at least 3 council members who are interested in the Athletic Fields Task Force. So that is, as we talk about investing in capital projects in parks and supporting parks, that is, right now, that's probably the short-term thing that we have interest in accomplishing. And we certainly will need the support of those 3 councilors plus the council at large, to support whatever those recommendations that come out of that task force, and to look at the rest of our park facilities as well.
We also need your commitment and support. We've done the surveys. We've asked the residents. So we need your commitment to help us in implementing the findings from all of these surveys that we are doing.
We need your support for our commitment to social equity, because we all feel that the parks and recreation programs in town ought to be accessible to everybody. And it shouldn't be, financial reasons shouldn't exclude somebody from participating. We also are hoping that we get your support in helping us to make the community center realize its full utilization. And again, that is having a facility supervisor in that building. And finally, to help us address the management gap that currently exists within parks due to, as Jerry mentioned earlier, the fact that we have cut positions or just not filled positions when they became open. So that, you thought I was kidding about an hour-and-a-half presentation. That kind of summarizes what we're doing and some of the challenges that we're facing and what we're looking for in the future. And at this time, would turn it over to some questions.
Thank you. That was very thorough, and I think it addressed a lot of questions that we have, and I'm sure there are more. So, Mr. Burt wanted to speak.
Can you touch base on the, explain the mobile recreation and transportation, that initiative you're looking at? I don't think you.
Sure. So what we're planning on doing is one of the senior center vans came offline this past, a couple of months ago. It was due to be replaced. We're proposing to keep that and utilize that as the van to provide. We would pack it full of games and things like that, and go out and have a set schedule where we would be in a certain neighborhood every Tuesday night, in a different neighborhood on Thursday night. We're also looking to partner. I've reached out to the library, and they're interested in a few nights during the course of the summer providing like an educational program, so that their staff would come with the recreation staff and provide some type of an educational program. I've also trying to work with Project Oceanology to do the same type of thing, and the Denison Pequot to do the same type of thing. So they wouldn't be attending or participating every single night, but if they picked a couple of 2 or 3 nights during the course of the summer, we could offer a variety of programs. Some of the funding from this, we're submitting a grant application to the Pfizer community, the Pfizer community grant to help pay for some of these things, but it's not going to cover all of the costs of this.
Just to jump in for 1 second too, as with all of these things, this stemmed from an identified need in the community. So when we're out talking to people and we say, hey, are you participating in our program? And they go, no, my immediate questions are, what are the challenges that are preventing you from being able to participate in the program? It's either transportation, childcare, or cost. So a program such as mobile recreation, we're eliminating all of those by we're coming to you. Bring your kids, have your kids run around, have it be a family affair. And we're coming to you, not asking you for money, we're coming to you to educate and celebrate and do something fun that otherwise you have said you would not be able to participate in. So we're here, let's make this happen.
Councilor Bordelon.
I just wanted to thank you guys for really going outside the box and really looking at the community at large, and not just a certain section of town, but the whole town. And definitely am very proud of the food insecurity initiative. And I was recently working with Ledge Light on their food insecurity. And they had a grant from the state, and they hired a bunch of people from different backgrounds, different communities. I got selected, and we did a whole presentation. It was going up to the state, and they're extending that program. I'm not sure if you guys use them as a resource, but they are collecting data on the food insecurity, and I think that's amazing. I think it's great. I think the needs of the children are sometimes met for breakfast and lunch and dinner is a gap, and that's a lot of the data that I had found. So I think you guys are right, spot on where you're going with it, and I know it's a starting point at the one spot, but even having some shuttle, looking at the city components, looking at pockets that are identified to have high levels of poverty or food insecurities or instability, or looking at numbers where Title I schools are located and where the children are coming from. Maybe even having some type of bus where families could hop on and, come get that food as well, because it might be hard to even get to that. That's just, only a certain section of town, but it's definitely a huge start. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about the diversity and equality and inclusion. I'm a firm believer in all of those aspects, especially making sure that all those areas are being met. So once again, I commend you guys for looking at those types of things which go outside of the immediate box of, okay, we have a rec program. So that's really exciting. And I do agree with you that the funding needs to come from somewhere, and we have to put our money into what we say we want the town to be. And one of the number one things from growing up here myself is watching it evolve, and we have to maintain the facilities that we have. And the park over down of Aquatic Plains over there was really exciting when it came in, and we have to keep up with it. We have to keep up with our sports fields. Our sports fields are extremely outdated, as we know. So all of this is exciting, and looking at some of the programs, I often go downtown Westerly a lot, and they have that new arts building coming in that's going to have like theater and shows. I often said there's a lack of that in this town, in the sense, not that we don't have it at all. The high school has programs, but a place where we have a stage, an ongoing pop-up theater, and live music that's not at a local bar, but that's more of a community venture. So, there's so much, and that brings in a lot of the arts and culture in the music. So I think, but looking at ways to fund some of this, it is going to be a burden, and it seems like maybe we could use some of our own TIF. I don't know, I'm just joking, but it sounds like we need a TIF program for our own buildings, in a sense, to come up with a plan and a timeline. That it seems that we at least need to start talking about it and figuring out how that's going to look, is how we are going to fund what we need. Looking at everything as a whole, I like that pop-up mobile unit too. That also helps not only with the insecurity of people who don't have food, but rides. One-car families, mother or father might be working, and the other parent has the kids and can't afford or get to the activity. So I think that's a great, once again, outside the box way of targeting and reaching the community at large. So I really commend you guys on everything you guys did to do this. And it actually warms my heart, because this is what I do in my private life, and for reaching out and trying to find out ways to break down those barriers. And I think you guys are pointing them. I know that some of the events I go to, different towns have different 5K races. I know we have our Mystic one here, that's a Mystic Stonington combination. But maybe some collaboration, and really maybe collaborating with the city a little bit as well, and having some type of race utilizing Eastern Point and bringing in some revenues. A lot of people travel. I was just in Willimantic a couple weekends at a Cupid run. And it was just a fun random pop-up Valentine's event. And people travel for those things. I don't run in them, I walk in them, but it was $25 entry, and I know Nyannic's going to have their big boardwalk walk run, and so more of those things are kind of fun and they're family focused. So I don't know if some of those would help in the big picture. It would only touch a small base, but I appreciate everything you guys have done. I'm really excited about it, and I'm interested to see where it's going to go.
Thank you.
Councilor Heath.
A couple of questions. You had mentioned earlier that there are different organizations, companies that want to sponsor events. What kind of events are they looking at?
Road races, summer concert series, pretty much anything that we are involved in. Not necessarily for completely altruistic purposes, which they will be the first to openly admit. We are the fun people. When we should, I'm kind of being funny, but I'm kind of not. It's like Parks and Recreation. Like, it's not like we're showing up and saying, hey, you guys are going to get a ticket. I love the police, not in a bad way. They're fantastic. But when businesses are trying to connect and kind of have that feel-good branding, their outreach marketing, a lot of them have indicated, hey, it makes sense for us to partner with you, because who doesn't want to support their little kid or their child's basketball team? Who doesn't want to go out and support a 5K? If we're able to connect them with the essentially captured audience that they want to connect with for about an hour, and it can be a fun event, and there's, positive energy and a lot of things going on, we could be doing a lot more of what we're doing, but we literally don't have the resources to do it. And it's a crazy situation to be talking to a business and have 5 different businesses, and this is not an exaggeration, say, I want to sponsor an event. And I go, you know what, we would love that too, but you're all in the same industry. So you have all said that you don't want to be competing with each other at an event. I don't have another race for you to be able to sponsor until June. We only have 7 concerts in the summer. And that's part of what can we do with cultural events? And we do, with the DEI committee, we have it's not just town, it's town, city. There's about 9 different businesses that are participating in it too. And a lot of those conversations are starting about, well, what kind of events can we be doing, and how can we collaborate, and how can we have like a united Groton kind of outreach? And there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of interest, but we just need more people.
Right, so I have a total of 4 questions.
Ooh.
You had mentioned the community center as maybe not being what you need it to be. It's an old school building. We're using it as a community center. What kinds of things, aside from the cameras, the doors, security, that kind of thing, don't fit?
Wow.
Hey, Mark, why don't you answer that one?
This is going to be an hour and a half.
I'm not supposed to speak on this question, so
You know, just the physical structure. I mean, there's multiple points of entry, and there's there's limited opportunities, and I don't want us to come across like we don't appreciate the fact that we have that space. It's certainly, we took a big step going from William Seeley to the community center. I'm not sure that that's the ultimate solution. You know, for us to do it right, we would really have to knock it down and start over. You know, what's going to happen at the Pratt Building is not going to address all of the needs of the community. There's limited space there. I mean, having a pool is going to be wonderful. You know, having a gym that we actually control is going to be wonderful, and trying to figure out what's going to happen in those other multi-use spaces is going to be exciting, but there's a limited number of that space. And so we're facing a situation where we're going to be running essentially 2 different buildings. And you know, I think the Public Works has identified a number of things that need to be addressed. Replacing the boilers, you know, I think I tallied the amount of money that was going to be spent at the community center over the next few years, and it was close to $2 million. And at the end of the day, we're still left with a building that wasn't designed for its intended use. And so I'm not sure that I answered your question, but there are a number of issues that you know, that would need to be addressed in order for us to provide a facility that's going to be able to meet multiple needs, multiple different needs of the community.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's where you want to end up with it. So is it town offices or mixed use or something like that? Mixed use being town offices and Parks and Rec, not saying putting stores in there or anything. Mm-hmm. And then a question on the children. Are all children or all participants required to pay, or is there like a means test or of some sort? Like you are on reduced lunch, so therefore you have reduced fees.
So yes, we do have, I mentioned before, we have actually 2 financial aid programs that we implement. One is a fee discount. So families who come in who have a demonstrated family need, and we just go by adjusted gross income on your tax form. It's just one number. People tell us what that number is, how many people in your household, and we instantly qualify them for discounts on any recreation program that they might want to do at any time throughout the year. So we just discount the fees. That's one way that we address the issue. The other is, in fact, our Mystic Irish 5K race actually generates revenue to kind of support financial need. So even if that financial assistance, these discounts that we give are not enough, we actually use those dollars that we've raised to kind of pay ourselves, you know, the fee for that program. So people can get, like, we call it a program grant, where we will actually pay the fee for somebody to take a writing program or to take the basketball program or whatever it is. So between those 2 things, we give out, again, over $40,000. Mm-hmm. The problem that we have with that, and you know, we would love to do more, but you know, when you come in and you see I can sign up for a indoor lacrosse program, for example, and it costs $75. Right at that point, somebody, even though we have financial aid, there's a certain number of people in town who just see that $75 and just don't give it a second thought. That's just not even possible for them. Not to mention the fact that they would have to go out and buy the lacrosse stick, and whatever padding and stuff like that. It's just not reality. So despite the fact that we are as welcoming and as unintrusive, as generous, and try to portray that kind of atmosphere to the community, it still prevents people from fully participating. So financial aid is a good thing, and we want to continue to do that, but it is not the answer. Just to pay everybody's bill to be in pay to play, it still doesn't answer the question. It still doesn't solve the transportation issue. It doesn't even, at times, get them over the, wow, that's even possible for me, barrier that they might be facing.
All right, thanks. And the last question, not so much a question, Dr. or Counselor Zapiri is not here tonight, so I'll speak not for him, but in his spirit. In concerns with adding staff. I hear that, and I understand you have limited resources over a long time, and we haven't, the councils in the past have not increased staffing, but when we increase staffing, we increase the costs that go along with it. So not seeing where your budget is or what your proposals are, I'm just recommending caution because we have some big things coming down the road. So that's all.
Are there any other, Councilor Franco?
All right, so then jot down my notes. I'm all for Parks and Rec. I think it's a wonderful thing that we have this in our town, and I think I can remember being a child and going to some Parks and Rec and being in a parade and on a float, and that was like my first remembrance of Groton Parks and Rec. It was a long time ago. But it was, it's very exciting for children. And so my question here is, what happened prior to us being on this council, what happened when they chose the Fitch Junior building as the place that they were like, this is where a community center is going to go? And why was it chosen that specific location? I mean, who was the ultimate approval of this? Because I mean, the town has, I think, has invested like about $1 million into it so far. So I'm just curious as to what was their thought process, or who was making those decisions?
Well, I guess the thought process is we're closing William Seeley, we need to move them someplace. And it was, well, let's move them to the Fitch Middle School, because I'm not sure what other buildings were available at that time to move us into. The community center is in almost the geographical center of the community. I mean, it's much better than where we were, way out on the outskirts of town. It's a wonderful location. I'm not sure that choosing to move us into Fitch or whatever other open building was available at the time would have made any difference. I'm not sure that one building would have been better than the other. And I guess that decision was probably made amongst council members, the planning department, the town manager. I'm not exactly sure, who and how that. I think they looked at, okay, we've got a number of buildings that are currently vacant. We need to move them in.
Was there a long-term plan thought out on this one? After you have a swath throughout the middle of the building that's basically the community center, and then there's a back end and a front end that have not been brought up to code.
Right.
So was there a long-term plan on those buildings?
I don't think there really was a long-term plan, and that's, I think, part of what we're saying, look, the council is going to need to make a decision. Do we want to continue to go down the path that we've started to go down, or do we want to rethink this and look at, is this where we want to go, or do we want to look at a different alternative? So I'm not aware of a long-term plan for that building other than what's been initiated, addressing the lead issue. We're now addressing the light issue, those kinds of things. But I don't think there is a long-term plan.
Can I, Mr. Burt wanted to jump in, then I wanted to add something in response to your question.
Okay.
Just to mention, there, of course, this was before my time, but there was a architectural study done for what to do with the rest of the building, but the cost was, I think, I don't hold me to this number.
15 million.
15 million, yeah.
15 million.
And then Rich Moravsik also did a study too, but nothing that we would pin to at this point, so.
What I wanted to say was the location, and if I'm remembering correctly, because this was RTM days, the thought was because it was adjacent to the town hall building, that eventually space was tight in the town hall building, then you could possibly move some of the people out and move them into like the classroom space, and then use the rest of the building for the recreation facilities. But there was, I remember them coming forth with this plan that was like $15 million.
Right.
And people were just like, you gotta be kidding me. So then when C.O.W. was going to be closing, then they needed somewhere to move people.
Right.
And this was the most convenient place because it is the center of town. And as far as long-term, I think it's just been piecemeal now that
Right.
they've actually moved over. I don't know if that helps or
I'm
not,
sorry.
but that's what we got so far.
All right, because I'm just like, I thought if you had that, the rest of the building, there would be a long-term plan maybe involved in that process, but. Then going off that, so you have mentioned the Mystic Oral School. And as I've discussed with some people in the community, they're saying, you know, you have the community center in the middle and then your possibility of having something at the Mystic Oral School. And like you're saying, there's a transportation issue. So you have the people over on the other side of town, I guess you call it, you know, the other side of town, and they're not gonna have, they don't have the transportation to get even to the middle of the town, never mind across town to the oral school. So the transportation, I think, is a wonderful thing that you're thinking here, or bringing mobile transportation to them. But that's another thing I wanted to keep in mind. If we are doing certain sections of town that we may have things, we might have to think of the sections that are going to be lacking as well. I don't know how we're going to do that, but it's something to keep in mind because I have heard this from people.
Sure. Yeah, we recognize that that's going to be a challenge.
Right.
And how exactly we address that, we're not really sure yet.
Right.
You know, the first step will be to get the feedback from the community, determine what's going to go in the building, and then there's also the, you know, the feasibility study to say, okay, based on what the community has identified as their needs, you know, what can we get in that space, what it's going to cost to operate, and what we project the revenue is going to be. And, you know, we could be looking at, oh, we're going to make $1 million a year, or it's going to cost us, you know, $300,000 to operate that building a year. And, you know, that's just kind of step one, and then it's how do we get people there, and, you know, all of those things, so.
Right.
Sorry, just for a second. I think one of the most exciting things, just talking about the Mystic Education Center and kind of ideally the Pratt Recreation Center going forward, this whole thing is about Groton's future, right? What an amazing state-of-the-art facility that we are all kind of working towards in various parts at a recreation center in a beautiful section of Mystic. And my genuine hope would be that whatever the other recreation center is, community center is, that's located in the heart of Groton, is the same type of world-class building that we can offer programming in. So that way the families in Mystic and the families in Pequannock Bridge both get the same quality of building and the same quality of service and the same quality of programming. And I think that really comes down to the heart of when we talk about Groton's vision, like, let's have Groton's vision be equal and be celebrating and be an investment.
I understand what you say, and I appreciate that, and I think that is a wonderful thought, but we're not actually paying for
No,
the
I know.
Mystic Oral School
Right.
to become refurbished, and that's going to be multi-millions of dollars to refurbish that building.
I know.
So I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if we have quite that kind of money to refurbish that building. But I would love to. And, but I also, another building that I spend, it seems just like as much time here as is the senior center. So, like I was there this past week and I saw, I don't even know how to pronounce it, the Gong Show, the Gnog Show.
Yeah.
Trademark.
It's very entertaining. I had a great time, and I will tell you, it's a lot of fun, and people should come out to it. And I also have we have beautification meetings there as well on Monday nights. So I'm seeing those children, and they're running out usually when I'm going out to the parking lot, and I think they just need to run and let off some steam. So I understand the concerns that are going on there. But something that has crossed my mind was there's so many people up there that Monday night, and they're only there for a short time, and the kids need to run. I have seen many parents out in the park, like outside, and their kids are just crying because they want to run around, but they're not allowed to do so inside, kind of thing. So to have some kind of activity that in the evening would be nice there as well, besides just having the meal. And something that did come to mind as you're stating that people are looking to sponsor things, and I see it down in the Stonington side of Mystic, is they have like on the green, they have music, and it's just somebody out there, a little group playing music, and people bring a blanket and they come and sit and listen. And it's, I don't know how much it takes to put something like that on, but it's just like it would be something nice that maybe we could do in the field there. I mean, there's field space. People can just come and sit on a blanket and listen, you know, something at night, like even on a Monday night when you have all these people there to begin with. Just something that's crossed my mind, I'm sorry. I mean, you guys are the pros and no, but, and something I wanted to question one more time, one thing on, is the pay to play. So I'm not quite exactly understanding what you're stating when you want people to, you want to open to everybody and be all inclusive, but I'm not quite understanding. Are you asking, so are you stating that people that can pay won't have to pay? You're opening it up free to everybody? I'm not exactly sure what you're stating here.
No, I think the pay to play, there are people in this town who are absolutely thrilled with programs. Just to pick the big one, karate. We have an unbelievable following for karate. We have absolutely no interest in disturbing any of that. That's working well. Those families who are participating in it participate season after season. Mom participates, dad participates, the kids participate, grandma and grandpa participate. That's fabulous, wonderful, and we have no desire to change that. But for families who aren't in karate, we're not providing services. So, you know, karate can pay for itself. We've demonstrated our ability to do that over 15 years. We haven't demonstrated the ability for us to take karate and swim lessons and all those things and other programs in summer camp and generate enough extra money that's going to allow us to go out and meet those people who can't afford to come in. So in addition to those things that we're already doing, we're proposing to do more. In addition, to reach the people that are not currently being served. The people who are currently being served will continue to be served. We're just trying to serve those others in the community who are not being served.
So when you're saying more, so are you saying advertise it differently so that people are aware of it more so?
No,
because as you stated,
no, there are barriers that prevent people from participating. There are barriers like transportation, cost, and those things. Since we can't, you know, if we can't drive them to our programs and give them free admission, or we can't do that for everybody, we're proposing another form of service to provide some part of their need. You know,
like you're saying to bring it to them.
We're taking
program?
a mobile van. We'll take to Brantford Manor, or we'll take to other places in town.
I see. I sort of got mixed up. I thought those were sort of two separate things. And when you're saying pay to play.
Well, they are two separate things. In one case, people are going to pay fees and they're going to drive to the Groton Community Center and participate. Those families that can afford to do that or have the means to do that will do that. The folks that can't do that, we're going to provide another.
But also, I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but also people who can afford to pay can still participate there if they had requested assistance. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We're not, this is not an either or thing. We're adding to what we're already doing. So if we're here, we're adding another element that we're going to add another segment of our community that we're not being served. And we're not taking away anything that anybody currently has, no.
Okay, I understand now. I didn't quite get it when you were first describing it, so
Well,
thank
I
you.
appreciate the opportunity to clarify that, because that's a very important thing. We do not want to take away any services from people who are currently being served.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm also one of the people that signed up for the Fields Task Force, so I can't wait. Thank you very much for everything that you do for our town.
Counselor Ober.
Guess I got the energy left. How about you guys? Have you taken this to the public?
We just did tonight.
Yes.
Well, I mean, how about doing a public presentation where people come in and we throw spit on the wall till we get, other ideas and get that involvement going? Like you've started to do it with the baseball fields and you've had people come forward and said, do you want to be part of that committee? I think we need to take this out to a public forum and say, look, this is, and just have questions and have boards up and have people say what they think about, or how could you get the money, or how could you get the transportation? What will we eliminate in order to make this grow? Let the community truly come in and have a voice. Because I think everything you want to do, there's a way to do it, but we have to get the acceptance of the larger community. We could sit here and say, gee, it seems like a great idea, but then we have to figure out how to pay for it. And, that's a struggle in itself. I'm sitting here, I've got all kinds of ideas running through my head about how we can get money for some of these different things. Because I think if we brought back the GBA, which we worked wonderfully, I thought, with the Parks Department. We did things that brought people together. We made money. We could do that again and have that money go into the rec department. There's just, I think we need that larger group getting behind this and understanding, what we are really trying to do. I think it's great. I think that if it's like when you're talking about, you have these different things that the kids can't afford to do, like maybe the stick game, whatever you call that thing.
Lacrosse.
What if a business was sponsoring it and they paid for it and they got to advertise the fact that they're paying for it? Or all the different events you have. Get a little competition going between the businesses to want to support those and be part of it. They put up things in their windows at their stores saying, this is what we're sponsoring, come on out and see it. Get the challenge going in this town to get these people to come out and do it. I have a couple businesses, I'd be more than happy to try to sponsor a couple events or an ongoing thing.
Awesome.
But we need everybody. And I think the only way we're going to do that is that maybe we do an information thing for the businesses and say to them, we need you. And this is some of the things we need you for. Would you take on this team and be the sponsor of it? Yeah. Would you help with this at the senior center and be the sponsor of it? And I think we could get this whole town involved and we could make these things happen. And we could ask the public, what do you want to do with this building? Because whatever we do for it, you're going to pay for it. And we got to have your input.
Yeah.
So sorry.
I'm
There
sorry.
is, no, I was just going to say there's going to be a great opportunity for us to do that as we go through the needs assessment. There's a community meeting plan, there's focus groups, there's stakeholder groups. The group that we're working with to conduct the needs assessment, that's a big part of what they're going to be doing is gathering that information, asking questions, what are the challenges that you see, what's the department doing well?
Is this group talking about going out and talking to people?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge part of what they're doing. There's going to be a statistically valid survey. There's going to be focus groups where they're inviting people in to speak. There's a public meeting. I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for engagement and for people to share what they see Groton's future and where Parks and Recreation fits into that.
Well, I think you got to get that involvement going, and you got somebody,
Oh, yeah.
you got 2 people there, 3 people there that can get the excitement up and going. And without that, there's no way we're going to be able to approve increases in the budget unless the people are behind letting us do it. If we sat up here and did it on our own, God help us. But if the community's interested in it and wants it to happen, then we can make it happen. But I think you gotta get that excitement going. You gotta get people involved. You gotta get those businesses competing against each other to get in there and want to do this. And I think it's possible. It's absolutely possible. That's how we started the parade. That's how we started the fall festival. We just got people excited about doing it. And whatever I can do to help, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in. I didn't take a turn yet, so I'm going to take a turn. And I'm just going to say, you have a dynamic team, and I'm seeing lots of good things coming from Parks and Rec, and that's making me very happy. It's good for the community. I kind of similar thing that Councilor Ovid was talking about with these sponsors that are clamoring for events, and my thought was, have Chelsea Groton Wednesday in Pequannock Bridge and let them sponsor the truck going to Pequannock Bridge that day, and have, I don't know what the other banks, Charter Oak on Thursdays or whatever it is, and let them tag on to some of these other things until you get the other events going. So until you come up with another 5K or another SantaCon or whatever you guys want to do, let them do the things that you have planned already, but you need the money for. So the trucks going into the communities and so forth. But I just want to let you know that I'm pleased with the energy that you guys have, and I like what you're doing, and please continue the good work, and hopefully we can work together and make a good community center for the center of Groton, in addition to the Pratt building, because the Pratt building is going to be amazing, but we need something here that's more accessible. Councilor Bordelon.
Thank you.
I just was also going to say, yeah, the Pratt building, if it's, nothing's proposed, and so it looks like it might be a lease. So it is still important to have some type of building that functions, and is Fitch Middle that purpose or not? I know when I first got elected on the RTM, they were in, the first thing we voted on was it phase 1 or phase 2, John, on the Fitch Middle? What phase are we up to? I know they had like 3 phases, if I remember correctly.
We have distinct phases at this point.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure we have distinct phases at this point.
Well, 2 years ago, there was the first thing that I voted on had three phases, and it was...
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay. Well, there was a packet, and I think we were voting on like phase 2 of 3, and the first phase, was like the piping and getting the bathrooms up and all of that. So that, I guess my question is, looking at that next phase, maybe maybe having that hard conversation and talking about, is it worth it to go in completion to the next phase of whatever that proposal was originally?
I don't think that was. I think, I'm sorry, can I speak?
Yeah.
Like I said, when I first got on the RTM 2 years ago, the very first item I voted on, that's why I remember it very, very so well, is voting on the next phase for the Fitch Middle School. And at that time, I raised the question because the public schools was having trouble with the lead. And I remember John looking and the property, and then I think even Mr. Berry was there, and I said, had the town, and they said, no, it has not been tested. And then I said, but before moving forward, I want to vote for this, but I don't want to vote on a building that has unpotable water.
Right.
So there was some type of phase, and I have it at home, that was started, and I believe it was like 3, and I think we were entering into like 2. So is there a plan to close out that phase? Has that been proposed yet, or?
Again, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Can we come back with that information?
Sure.
Possibly. Thank you. Because I'm curious too as to what does that look like looking back at it? Is it really functioning? And I do agree. I mean, how much money do we want to put into something and it really not serve its full purpose? So
And
it's a
for
tough
anybody
one.
who hasn't been to the community center yet, we would love to show you around. So you know how to get in contact with us. So.
Councilor Franco wanted to add something.
I believe the money that was being put in was supposed to be the last payment for the community center. That was supposed to be the last payment for that portion of the community center, so they could get the final phase of that part done and opened.
Yeah.
So that, and then other things popped up that happened. Have you put the signs out by any chance? Are you getting signs for the community center?
We just completed a Facebook, I don't know, not competition, but
Kind of.
we put 2 different signs out there and had folks on Facebook decide which they'd like. And that just wrapped up next week. So we're moving forward with getting a banner out there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Aubry.
I was just going to say, what I remember is we said it should be done in phases, and we needed a plan. And I said specifically, I'm not sure where or when, but I specifically said I didn't want to spend any more money until we had a plan. And I didn't want any more of it opened up. I didn't want anything done to it till we had a plan and we could have an idea of what it was going to cost, and then how we could get some in each year to the budget to make it happen. So I agree with you. I don't think there was really a plan. It happened out of necessity. And I think if we're going to do anything else, we have to have a plan as to what part we would do, what the cost would be, and then go forward. But we've done all we can without a real plan.
Okay, so we are at 10:15, unless any other counselors have comments on this. We thank you for your presentation.
It was great.
We thank you for your
Thank you.
energy.
Thank you.
All right.
So because it is 10:15, we have two more items on the agenda. We need to have consensus to take up another item since it's after 10 o'clock. Is there any objection to taking up 2020-46 and 2021-10? Any objection to taking up the last two items?
I'm going to leave. I'm feeling
go?
crappy.
Okay.
So I don't know if that'll affect things or not.
1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 5. No, we're good. We should be good.
Okay.
Thank you. So Aubry at 10:15. Aubry out, 10:15. All right, so we are on 2020-46. And I have to look and see where we left off. Give me 1 second.
We're back at the
So
beginning.
we're back to Councilor Baumgartner with page 160. And this is 2020-46 part-time seasonal pay plan, please.
Make a motion. I'll make a motion to recommend a resolution to adopt the proposed seasonal part-time pay plan. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Baumgartner and seconded by Heed, and I just wanted to note that you all have a corrected sheet that was left at your seat. And if you look on page 162, the chart on page 162 has correct information. The page you have in front of you replaces page 167. Okay, so what you have in front of you is replacing 167. 167 was off by about $1 in the figures. However, your cumulative chart on 162 has correct figures in it. Gentlemen.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Bob Zagami, Director of HR and also Assistant Town Manager. Great energy tonight. You've heard some great ideas and some great programs, but they come with a bit of a cost and a bit of a challenge. And that's what we're going to talk about, this part of the challenge. And I don't want to bring anybody down after we've got everybody up and seeing how psyched up they are about these things. We've seen some great programs here. But one of the things we have here is we realize that the political war is over about the minimum wage, and we know it's been established. But along with the minimum wage also becomes another little challenge of compression as these move upward. So without further ado, I just wanted to make that statement and say that in my opinion, I've seen, now I've been here almost 7 years in Groton, I've seen economic development, I've seen public works, human services, parks and rec. I'm kind of the opinion, I don't think there's anything they can't do. You know, it just, I hear about parades and things like that, and at one time, I guess these were just a dream, and these all came true. So when I look at a team like that, I just can't see anything that could, even this, could hold us back. But I want to just bring this over to Jerry, and I'm going to let him walk you through our chart, which is not that difficult, really. But we went out as far as 2023 to establish how this minimum wage is going to go all the way up to $15. So that it is of a concern.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Bob. If you look just on any page of that the pay plan for seasonal and part-time employees, you will see that most of those jobs listed on there are Parks and Rec jobs, and most of them in the Recreation Division. So the Recreation Division is the most affected part of the town in terms of this, and so that's why I'm sitting here. I don't normally do human resources type stuff, but I do have a fair amount of knowledge about how this will affect these people who have their first jobs, you know, and what happens with that. We do know that the minimum wage by June 2023 is going up to $15 an hour. When that law went into effect last October, minimum wage was $10.10, and we had our pay, that was within the existing pay plan that the town had adopted for seasonal and part-time people. The library page and food service worker and some of those lower level positions in kind of level 1, they were already at minimum wage at that time. As the minimum wage grows up or increases, the number of levels in our pay plan get increasingly affected. As if we didn't do anything, if the town council does nothing tonight, the law of Connecticut is going to take over and rule what we're going to do. The eventual results of that will be that a library aide or a library page or a program playground leader is going to be making the same amount of money as a senior lifeguard or a water safety instructor or a program director, or the wages will compress. Everybody, regardless of job, is going to earn the same amount of money. Further, everybody, if you've been with us 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter, you're going to be making the same amount of money. And I think we all recognize that that is a problem. And from the recreation manager saying to the director of human resources, I can't have that. I won't be able to staff my programs to be able to do my job if that's the case. So what we've done is we've gotten the people from the various departments, Parks and Recreation, the library, the police, have all gotten together, and we've analyzed what we think is a reasonable solution here. We propose having at least $1 difference in the different levels in the pay plan. 1, 2, and 3 actually are merged into one. We recognize there's not much we're going to be able to do with that, but at level 4, between level 3 and level 4, we want to maintain $1. Between level 4 and 5, we want to maintain $1. Between 5 and 6, we want to maintain $1 level. We feel that that's a reasonable type of barrier in between those jobs, and it allows for people to strive for promotions or to be compensated fairly for higher level positions. The other thing that we've done is we've taken, in years past, when you come back every season, a worker who came back the next year would get 50 cents more than they got the year before. And that actually amounts, for people who are making $10 an hour, that's a 5% pay increase. That's out of the norm. That's higher than anybody else would be getting. So as this pay plan gets implemented, people are going to automatically get raises from the minimum wage going up. But we also want to maintain some level of difference between the guy who's a first-year leader and the girl who's a second-year leader or a third-year leader. So we just, instead of 50 cents though, that's the impact on our budget to keep that 50-cent thing would just be astronomical, and really without, we wouldn't have an ability to pay. So we've shrunken that, or made that difference between year 1 and year 2 and year 3 and year 4 smaller, just a dime. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if you think about it, the year 1 person at a low level is going to come back, they're going to have the minimum wage this year. They come back next year, minimum wage went up $1, so they're actually going to get $1 plus that dime. So it's not like they're not being fairly compensated. The difference between the two is there, but it's not like that they're being shortchanged greatly. I mean, they are in fact getting large pay increases, relatively large pay increases just due to the minimum wage. So All of that was a lot of discussion between a lot of staff members, and the bottom line is that chart that you see, kind of what the impact is going to be for various departments or divisions. And in Parks and Rec, in the current fiscal year right now, the minimum wage impact is about $6,000. In this current fiscal year, Special Revenue Fund is going to have to find a way to pay that, or use fund balance. Next year, the impact, as it goes up another level in the pay plan, the impact is greater. And then the year after that, it's even greater. And then the year after that, greater, and so on, because more and more levels of our pay plan become impacted. So that's pretty much the case, and you can see there, over the course of several years, we have a $87,000 hole that we're going to have to fill in recreation, in our program fund, in special revenue. And I mentioned earlier tonight about raising program fees. We recognize that charging the same amount that we've charged to do something is not sustainable for us. We have to increase fees, and so. I don't know that there's any option. I guess the town council does have an option. You can either approve the pay plan, or you can not approve the pay plan, but if you don't, then we're going to end up with numbers that are not wildly different from this, but we're going to have compression in addition to having to pay more money. So I don't know if I can answer any questions about this that, it seems like a straightforward situation, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Quick question on 162, the last column for police for FYE '24 says not available. Is that because, is that a contract thing where there will be new contracts, so you won't know?
I'm sorry,
how
I don't
it's
have
gonna be
the
impacted?
full
I'm
agenda
sorry.
packet, so.
It's for FYE '24, the last year of the police, it says the figure is not available, and I was just wondering, does that coincide with the new contract? You don't know what the new contract will be?
She's talking
or-
about this one right here, Bob.
Oh, basically what we're looking at is, these are not any contractual positions. They're not bargaining unit positions. What it is they just don't have, the prediction there, because it has to key off of a few things. Some are telecommunicators that are going to be, we've got a bunch that might be retiring. We also have the supernumeraries that they, whether they use them or not, or have them available. That's basically what it is. We haven't used that many supernumerary. They're not really that abundant, but we've used a couple here or there. So it's just a matter of not knowing what's out there at that time.
Okay, because I was looking on 160, and you have the asterisk at the bottom. It says the changes would occur each time. Minimum wage changes, so they keep pace with other police contracts. So,
What we try to do is try to make it somewhat similar. It's not going to hit anywhere near what the police are making, but depending upon what they are, will raise where we're going to go, if you know what I mean.
I gotcha. Thank you. Any questions? Counselor Heed?
1995, I was making $10 an hour at the front desk of a hotel. Last year, I asked my hotel how much they were paying their front desk. 24 years later, it was $10 an hour. So I don't have a problem with a pay raise. And just looking at this, it looks pretty standard. I mean, there's not a whole lot about it that's contentious. It all makes sense to me, so I'll support it.
Counselor Bordelon?
Thank you guys for being proactive. I mean, it's something that's affecting everything, and we had a meeting last week at my job about this. There are some people that are hourly, and someone that's making 15 now, like, in the next 2 years, if the other person, is coming in at 15, this person's, should ask for 18, right? I mean, so it is a reasonable thing. I mean, they've been doing it for a while, so I do think looking at the numbers and being proactive, it's pretty straightforward, I feel. And I appreciate you guys starting to do the legwork now, because it's coming all the way to the end. And
It's as good as we could come up with at this point, because we really don't know where we're going to be with compression or whatever it is when it gets down there as competition goes around. This is the guideline, what we have, but market pressure could change even with the minimum wage is put in there.
Counselor Franco?
I understand everything you're doing, and I don't think you have an option. There's no other option, I don't think.
No option.
My question was, as you have here, it says part-time seasonal pay plan. So if you hire seasonal, let's just say a playground attendant in the summertime, and they're only like a few months, right? Are they considered always a new hire, or do they get actually over longevity? Do they get to go up
No.
steps, and how does that?
For our summer camp staff, for example, if we hire somebody, a seasonal worker is somebody who works a lot of hours in a short period of time. A part-time person that works a few hours over a longer period of time, I guess, is the difference. But there's a classification for actually what is a seasonal employee, what is a part-time employee. But for a camp staff member who would come back next year, we'll move from step 1 on the pay plan to step 2. Every year that they come back, they would move up a step on the pay plan. For part-time employees, once they serve a year in that position for us, then they move up a step on the pay plan. So even seasonal people at our camps work, 35 to 40 hours a week, for example. So they work a lot of hours in those summer months. Somebody who works in our aquatics program works 10 hours a week for, say, 30 weeks out of the year. So, the number of hours worked is approximately the same. So either they come back for the next year at the same job, they get that step, or if they work an entire year at the beginning of the next year, then they get that extra step.
All right, so they're not really considered new hires.
They are not new hires, no. I mean, we would rehire. I mean, there's a whole process in HR where you have to put them on payroll and take them off payroll. That process worked. But yeah, a returning staff member does not go through a new application process to return to the same job.
I was just wondering. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we will vote on 2020-46 part-time seasonal pay plan, and we are at 6 counselors now. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And thank you for bearing with us tonight. I feel like I've kept everybody up late, so thank you so much.
There's more to come. Once again, I will ask again, consensus to take up the last item. It doesn't require a motion, but it's just a discussion. Is everyone fine with moving ahead? So we are at single-use plastic reduction ordinance next steps. And Councilor Franco had requested discussion of 3 items.
All right,
Take it away.
so I'll speak on this. The first one that I had requested was the Joint EDC Conservation Commission Public Relations Marketing Campaign for Businesses. So, were you saying something?
I was just saying, after each one, you want me to try and give some input?
Okay, only if it's positive.
Yeah, that's fine. No, in terms of, having talked to the people involved.
So I'd like to make a referral to the EDC and the Conservation Commission jointly to create a public relations marketing campaign for businesses in relation to the new plastic reduction ordinance. I believe it would be helpful for businesses to have a poster and or postcard stating what the ordinance is and the many reasons it will help our community. And I foresee the need for a small amount of town funding to print the posters and postcards. And I was hoping that we could come up with some kind of catchy catchphrase that might catch on. And go ahead, John.
Sure. And there's a couple different things. One, in terms of a joint one, Conservation Commission, who we have the chairman here, so if there's anything he wants to
Did you want to come up,
input in,
Mr.
that's
Dunn?
fine. But
You're welcome to.
the EDC, my understanding is the EDC feels they'd like to, because the Conservation Commission have already done like the outreach for why we need it. The EDC would like to do it on their own for the business part in the next steps. So that's been their request.
That's how I was thinking of it. So conservation can maybe create the poster and EDC could distribute the poster. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, in terms of just putting on the whole thing, EDC has asked for them basically to be business-focused, EDC-focused in terms
Well,
of
that's
next
what I was,
steps.
in my mentality was that maybe the Conservation Commission could create the poster, design it, and then the EDC could actually do all the business outreach part of it and distribute it. But that's why I was saying, I'm not expecting EDC to come up with conservation ideas. That's in my mentality. Can you say that one more time, the last part, what's the EDC want, what are they thinking?
Oh, in terms of the business outreach, that they weren't foreseeing it, I guess, my understanding is a joint effort. Because Conservation Commission has already done a piece on the need for it, EDC wants to do a presentation on what it really means, explaining how it works, that type of thing.
Okay, so they couldn't distribute
I'm
flyers
sure
to
they could,
businesses?
if there was.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is who are we going to get to? So we identified 266, I think, businesses that would be affected versus the grand list of 1,000. So we're not talking about everybody, right? And so the question is, how do you get to those individuals? And through the EDC, I mean, that seems to be the right way to do it. And also for continuing feedback. If you look at the long view, you want to get feedback on how it's going. You want to talk about what should be changed or added to the program, or perhaps some adjustments. So as we take the long view, we want to make sure we start off with the business community and, you know, providing the, I won't say the re-justification, but the validation of what it is. And we had a 90% RTM, you know, vote in support of it, and we have the 70–80% of the community, yada, yada, yada. So I think that part is fairly straightforward. So the focus initially should be on the execution of how to do this and how it can actually help the businesses, you know, kind of expand. I mean, we heard earlier about why people are here in terms of community involvement, et cetera. This is actually a part of that community involvement.
Right.
So I think that's all good. So I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm meeting with
Bill Groves?
I think Thursday. So I'm going to have a one-on-one just before the strategy meeting and talk about this and get things, you know, kicked off, because we don't have actually a lot of time now that that the clock has already started. So I think that was the first. I think we're talking about the first point you made, right? Which is working together with the EDC lead, us providing the support and material. But a lot of it, to me, I want to see a higher push on business than it is on conservation. That was why we, you know, the
Right.
recommendation was that we didn't take the lead.
Right, and I figured if these referrals were accepted, the committees I mentioned could also create subcommittees to tackle these projects along with community volunteers. As the Conservation Committee survey revealed, residents would volunteer for the plastic reduction initiatives. And with clear, you know, so I figured that maybe those volunteers that had signed up.
Yeah, I mean, we
saying
got
they
100
could
names
assist.
on the list that said, I'll do something, right?
So
And we've
right-
already used some of them, but it's almost like too many folks wanted to do something. So it's just selecting it. So I
So
don't
if they
think, I don't
create-
think volunteers is a problem.
Right.
We just have to say, this is what we want.
And that's why I'm thinking maybe a subcommittee. It doesn't have to be the EDC and the conservation, but maybe some people from both joining together and creating maybe a
Yeah, that-
subcommittee.
yes.
With the volunteers, maybe.
Yep.
That's what I was just foreseeing. So it could happen, whatever. Do you want me to go into the second one now? Or are we going to discuss? Okay. I'd also like to make a referral to either the Conservation Committee and/or the EDC to create a program that awards and recognizes Groton businesses that go above and beyond the current ordinance by reducing plastics, reducing waste, or other avenues to create an environmentally healthy Groton community. I foresee award winners being recognized here by the Town Council, maybe possibly a certificate, and special stickers that the businesses can attach to their front business door proudly, stating that they are recognized Groton environmental stewards or something of that nature. And I foresee this with a very small amount of town funding to create the special door stickers. And with that, I'm sure, I'm not expecting anybody to go business to business, but rather maybe with an email list that we could possibly send out a survey of some sort or share it on social media and get the input from the community on what they're seeing in the community, so that they're telling us, so that we're not like trying to sweep the whole community and find the best businesses, but rather have people nominate people. That's what I foresee. So it's not as much work for the, you know, the volunteers in the town. So that's what I was thinking. John?
I'm
sorry.
I'm not sure this year's gonna be a lot of staff time available to help towards it, and my understanding is Conservation Commission have other goals, so I defer on whether they want to, and I don't know if EDC would be willing to take a lead or not.
Are they allowed to have a subcommittee under the conservation group as a subcommittee that may be able to, with volunteers that could take this on and report back to them?
I'm sure they could, but.
As long as it's under three people or
Right,
less.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think on that one is, the Groton Advocacy Group actually made a sticker. I think you probably saw them in some of the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually kind of an organic growth of that, and if you expand that, and have them put a sticker like that on the windows of businesses that are participating, et cetera, et cetera. So I think on the first part of your question, I think we can almost grow that organically, and you got built-in volunteers that'd be happy. I mean, they were out passing them out as we were going. So I think that one's pretty straightforward. And I'll be happy to go back to them on that. GCA.
All right, thank you.
Identify businesses. That, in effect, with the first point, by them participating or volunteering, a small sticker, something on their window, I think, would suffice for that. Now, what was the second part of the second question?
Well, that was the part where they could have just a sticker being recognized
Right.
by the community, by, citizens who nominate them. It's basically so there's less work.
Oh, okay.
And that they
you're
can get a
into-
sticker
okay,
on the
The second
door.
part is what, quote, recognition. So the first part, I was saying, is just, I'm participating and support the program. I mean, that's, part A. Part B would be, is there some recognition after X months, because it would have to be executed, that says you took a lead or something, so it would need a criteria.
Going
it would
above
need a
and beyond,
recommendation,
kind of
it would- yeah, above and beyond. That one is, right now, is I don't know. One would have to say, what would be a criteria? And again, I would say from the business point of view, I would almost like to see that more organically growing. What do they think? I mean, we had, it was just the other night on Sunday, right, at Manana, that there was a business guy that was promoting it and was being more aggressive and offered his establishment. So I think, something will occur to us. Right now, I don't know what their criteria would be.
Right,
First-
and that's what I'm saying, like, if the community recognizes somebody is going above and beyond, they can be recognized as maybe somebody that's being a good steward of the community, kind of thing.
Well,
That's all.
okay, take it as we'll look into
You
it.
can, these are just some ideas that I have.
Okay.
This is just a starting point. All right, so the third one is, I would like to make a referral to the EDC and the Conservation Committee jointly to create a reusable bag that can be sold at many stores in Groton for a nominal fee. The graphics pertaining to Groton and their environment could be a community affair via a contest, along with the community selecting the winner, maybe by a survey. This project would need to be run by a committee in conjunction with selling to area businesses. I foresee this project needing an upfront funding from the town to purchase printed bags, though upon sale to local businesses, the money should be recouped. So my thought was, with minimal fee, we could have community contest, and they can design a graphic. And then when they're made, they can be sold in stores. Like if you've gone into CVS, they are selling Fitch sports apparel. So you can go into CVS and buy a Fitch shirt, a sweatshirt. And I was hoping that this could be something that's a community pride thing. So just yesterday, I was at the library. This is a plug for the library, by the way. It says, "Sorry, I'm booked, Groton Public Library." They created this bag. They purchased it online. They sell it at the library for $5 a piece. I think 3 for $14. They have sold over 500 of these just at the library. I have not seen them on social media. I haven't seen them advertising. They just simply, people come in and buy it for $5. So my thought being, this is like a community pride thing, and people like this. And this is the same type of thing with a bag. And it's to create a community pride. We could have it, and it's a one-time thing. This isn't an ongoing, like we're going to supply the stores all the time, but maybe we have a certain number we create, have them distributed to the stores that we could think of, like, like Bridge Market would probably sell some, or places that you would need maybe a reusable bag. And they would probably participate, and after they've purchased them from the town, it's basically, it's a one-time thing. And maybe in the future, they might try we could try it again at another point if it's successful with different ideas. So, John?
I think there's a lot of legwork on working with the stores. And again, I worry about staff time with planning.
Well, this isn't supposed to be a staff time thing. This is supposed to be a committee.
If a committee wants to take it on, that's fantastic.
That's what this is supposed to be about. This is not
Yeah.
supposed to be about
Yeah.
staff. That's not my thought process. And that's why when you said the conservation group had all these people that said they would volunteer, I'm thinking they could create these subcommittees with all these volunteers to help out with these type of things.
You know, and a first step would be maybe to make contact with some of these stores, see if they'd be interested in carrying something like that before you go to too much
I think when from a business point of view, there are a lot of stores have already done that with their own advertising. It's very similar to what the library did. Except, Black Dog bag. Buy $50, you get a free bag. I mean, that was what was on their storefront, right? And so most of, all the grocery stores, they have their own,
That's correct, but
they have their
something
own
like
bags.
But I would say somebody like McQuaid sells Stonington bags. They did this with the town as well. The town of Stonington has done this, and they have brought them out to stores, and they're doing the same type of promotion because it's a PR event, and it's trying to get our community to think environmentally friendly, and that we are doing our part. And that's, I'm not trying to say that yes, all the stores have their own bags. I understand that, but it's a community thing. So that's why I'm trying to throw this out there. If these are issues that I understand, but maybe you can bring them back to your committee and see what everybody else on the committee thinks. I'm not sure, or if they're willing to create subcommittees.
Well,
If the council is approving that.
I have an idea. I don't know if it would work or not, since Conservation Commission sounds like they're very busy, and if we're going to task EDC with the other thing, why don't we see if the Groton Parks Foundation, because one of their criteria is conservation, maybe they would be willing to take on the bag thing and sell it, and then they could recoup the cost for their special revenue fund.
Whatever works.
I don't know.
I'm just coming up with some ideas
Yeah.
to try and promote and bring light to the things that we've done in Groton and bring environmental awareness here with a PR.
Or beautification committee.
Or beautification. I'm really busy.
All right. Did you want to go over anything else, or?
That's what I have,
That's
and
good.
it's, I don't know how everybody else feels, so I
like
just
it.
brought it to the council.
I think it's the best idea we've heard all night.
Why, thank you. So,
Anybody else? Do you want us to endorse something? Are you looking for feedback? Are you looking for staff direction? I'm not sure where you wanted to go with this. Are you just going to ask them to see what they can come up with first and then come back to us?
would you like to take this
Well, I
first
think
and discuss it
we
with
kind of
EDC?
have a plan based upon the recommendations so far. So, I mean, with the addition, that you made in terms of the Parks and Recs, but I will go back on the first two and, take that action so the staff doesn't have to.
And I'll touch base with park staff on the third one
All right,
about
thank
the foundation.
And you're going to, Mr. Dunn, you will discuss this with EDC on Thursday evening or Thursday during the day?
On the whole thing, yes, but we're reaching out and doing collaboration with the other, conservation groups, in town.
Okay.
So we want to attack this, I guess, collectively, which is what happened as part of the ordinance pursuit. You notice that we actually did work together on that.
Right.
So that I expect, and, that we'll continue that collaboration. And these things will be part of that, and plus additional things I think that they're doing on their own.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, Councilor Bordelon?
I also think it would be possibly, just a thought, a great idea to, if it does, do a fundraiser for the Parks and Rec, maybe whoever heads this, contact the high school. There's a lot of student artists up there, and they might think this is really fun too. Since a lot of them, it's affecting their generation, their time, they want change. It might be a fun graphic, and the school has the resources and the time, the students, to design something. And that would be really cool to have it by a local student or artist or potential upcoming artist or whoever, and put it on the bag. I don't know, just a thought. I know when I was up at Fitch and recently, there's been different projects they've done, and they like to get these kinds of things, so it might be kind of helpful. I don't know. Involve the kids.
Councilor Baumgartner?
Councilor Bordelon stole my comments, so I'll yield the floor.
Nice, I did a good job.
All right, so I think we're good with that.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you
thanks
very
for
much,
staying
Mr.
so
Dunn.
late.
I appreciate it.
I came late, I figured I'd time it.
All right.
We
didn't
came
do the
early.
award. I just wanted to say that we have a couple of working groups that we are getting together, and the short-term rental working group, I will be working with that, Councilor Bordelon, Councilor Franco. The Fields Working Group will be Councilor Bordelon, Franco, and Zepari. The Fields Working Group will be staff-led, the short-term rental will be council-driven. Correct, Mr. Burt?
Right. Give some thought to who a person or two might want to be, Give some thought too, with the Groton Long Point Bridge, we need to have a work group on that formed soon. So we need a volunteer or two from the council to serve on that.
Very good. Are there any people interested in serving on the Groton Long Point Bridge group? Baumgartner and Bordelon. Keith? Yeah, we're going to have to check back again because we have 3 people out, 3 people missing, but I will note that. Mr. Burt, did you catch the names?
Yes.
So far, we have 2,
Well,
but
there-
we need to
if-
throw it to the other 3 as well to be.
And if there's, I mean, if there's a lot of interest in that, you know, I'd be willing to concede that. But if there's at all going to be any collaboration with Stonington on the North Stonington Bridge, definitely be an interest there if there's any movement on that, probably more so on their part.
Yeah, and I did have some communication, by the way, from the first selectman. They're just kicking around ideas. They're trying to figure out how they could fund their portion still, so that's still alive and well. I don't know if it'll be it's really just them coming up with their money, so I'm not sure. There won't really be a task force, it's just an engineering project and build it. It's just them coming up with the money and us approving. I do have in my budget, for our portion. Newspaper reached out too, by the way, so they're gonna do a little story on the bridge upcoming.
Very good. Does anyone else have any other business?
I just was going to
Councilor Bordelon.
speak to the working groups. Is there a timeline roughly when we think those may start? Just to kind of put it in my...
So the Fields Working Group is staff-led, so that's entirely up to Mr. Locken.
All right, so wait for a contact.
Short-term rentals will be late March at the earliest.
March, okay.
And that's, the short-term rentals is a long-term thing. You're talking at least probably a year and a half.
That's good, I'm not part of the committee then, so this will be my...
I would anticipate for the GLP for the bridge, probably a couple months till we start.
Okay.
At the latest, hopefully.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Baumgartner, seconded by Bordelon. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, so moved unanimously with 6. We are adjourned at 10:54.